Good evening and welcome to this meeting of the Troutdale Budget Committee for Wednesday, April 22nd, 2026. If we could have a roll call, please, sir.
Yes. Mayor Rittma.
Here.
Councilor Andrews.
Here.
Councilor Allen. Here. Councilor One.
Present.
Councilor White.
Here.
Councilor Davidson.
Here.
Councilor Leamy.
Here.
Danny Stephenson.
Here.
Dean Dent.
Here.
Heidi Timberman. Here. Sandy Glantz. Present. Paul Wilcox.
Here.
Victoria Rizzo. Here. And Kevin Meekoff.
Here.
Okay, we have a quorum and we will go right into.
Okay, well, just brief for tonight's game plan. The good news is the chair said we'd be done by 9 p.m. I'm sorry, we said we'd be done by 9 o'clock. He just didn't say whether it was 9 a.m. or p.m. So, in any case, blew my own joke there. So tonight we will continue with department reviews, division reviews, primarily in the general fund. Here in a moment, we'll do our regulatory requirement for the evening for public comment. And then we'll dive into those reviews, and we'll need to take a break when we get through kind of all the departments. Typically our process then to jump back over to the Urban Renewal Agency budget. We'll wrap that one up tonight and then come back and spend the remainder of the evening chatting about the general fund. So with that, Mr. Chair.
Okay, at this time, I would like to open the public comment period on the fiscal year 26-27 budget. And any citizen may speak to any item relative to the budget, and other city issues are not appropriate at this meeting. I do want to state by state statute, this will be our only public comment period on the city's budget this evening. So with that, is there anyone online wishing to speak this evening? None. Okay, I have none. Anyone in chambers wishing to speak this evening? Stand over there.
Oh, we stand up today?
Yeah, can you do that? Can you chair?
Yeah, I'm kind of short.
There's an open tile there.
Oh, okay, I can sit down. Careful with the cord. Yep, I see it. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Hi, my name's Gail Stevens. Again, being a former budget officer, I have a tendency to read through everything and kind of look at stuff. So since I'm not part of the dialogue, I wanted to have this last only opportunity today to speak some thoughts that I've been processing since Tuesday. One of the things I did, and I started it last year, was I did a comparative of where the budgets come in at and where the actuals come in at each year. And we're always a year behind. And as a budget officer, that was always hard to explain to staff that beginning fund balance is a guess of where it's going to be at. We really don't know where 2025, the current year is going to end. And in a historical look back about just the last couple of years, we've always ended up beyond the contingency, a couple $1 million higher. So a lot of the things, one of the things Travis mentioned yesterday is there's more things in the capital budget than they know they can get done because they may have to shift to something else. So that's really one of the biggest drivers of budget. Some of the budget overages is having the funds and the projects available to be able to move to. And as a budget officer in the past, that was always one of the things I always try to, get across, that you're not going to get 100% of the capital fund spent. Never. My last team achieved 85%, and that was astronomical. So always keep in mind that this is a budget, and the budget is to allow for the operations and to be able to get some things done and have things in there that they know they may not get to, but they're in there just in case they need to shift to that. So please keep that in mind. Second, as a budget officer, or as my personal experience has been, it's really hard when line by line is reviewed, and this is a very large budget in comparison to what I had, on individual items. Policy is what's really important, and where do you want the city to go is what I'm looking for, hoping to hear, because where you want the city to go on an overall basis then allows for Mike and his team to be able to look at the budget and apply what you want, such as 921 Buxton. Do you want that to become the city hall? Do you want that to be a lease? Or a third option, do you want to sell it? There's always that option. So those are the policy drivers, and the police is a big discussion tonight. I look forward to hearing what you all are thinking about it, because as a citizen, as a resident, I am curious as well. And so I guess what I'm asking, and I concur with, please being thoughtful about whatever what else is thinking, but we all do think differently. Oh, and I understand that the public service fee is actually calculated at $32 based on the ordinance that was adopted last year with the public service fee. And that is, if you look at the total cost of police and fire, subtract out 100% of our property taxes, meaning everything goes to police and fire. The difference between that's what the public service fee pays. That's how it's calculated, if I got that correct. And I'm looking at Mike to confirm that. So that $32 is not something Eric came up with just to come up with a number for you. It's actually in ordinance. And so I thought that would be something you could deliberate on tonight. I was wrong. I got a clarification beforehand. So I wanted to share my knowledge with you, or with it, kind of making as I process through. So I look forward to conversations about how you want this budget implemented, and if any adjustments need to be made, giving Mike and his team some time maybe to come back on Tuesday with that dollar amount recommendation you want them to find. If you want them to find a certain dollar amount or reduce it, they can do that. I found that worked best whenever I had to do it, and I had to do a $2 million cut, so I get it. But my staff was able to do it, and we came back to the budget committee with something. So it's a lot easier for them to decide what line items they can truly cut, or what projects they will postpone. It does help them, but you can give them direction of what you're interested in. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak this evening? Gordon?
My name is Saul Pompeyo. I'm not the Council Andrews. Anyway, I comes to us, the last time I say a comment, and that comment do many times in the City Council, but the reason I do the comment because I never have an answer. Is knowing the comments is not needs to have an answer. I hope so one of you guys ask the answer. What is the question? My question. I already asked some of the city councils, and really they don't know why. And my question is very simple. Why, what is exactly the charge for the $32 before 15 and now it's $32 is part of the budget? What is the reason that it is something attached to the sewer? That means if I use more sewer, I need to pay more safety and fire. What is related? And that is the real question. Why you use the sewer average usage for the fire and safety? Nobody know. I want to know why you use that thing. It's like you use average house in Troutdale, 1,800 something average. And you go to pay $32. Do you know how many square feet have Amazon? They have 2 million square feet. How you guys know they pay enough? And you go to pay $32 because maybe they pay more. And how it's supposed to be charged is for the risk. I don't want to invent the wheel. And it's very simple. You call the insurance company and take the risk of the fire and the risk of the fire. But I don't think so anything about that charge is related for the sewer. The sewer is the minimum, the base. The extra, like I pay 15 times more for the sewer. It's like I go to give you another example. The building for the city, the Cox building, how say Cox? Sam Cox. Why they pay less than me? They have a kitchen and it's bigger. But they use loose sewer. That is, I hope so, one of you guys, because I don't have the right to ask an answer and have a question. When you guys have the answer, I need to give you a question. I hope so you guys ask the question for the, why they use the sewer, use it for charge the safety. And it's not about the use it for the sewer, the system development charge. It's something else. Why they attach to that? And that is my question. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? Do you want to slide down one? On this side and not go over the cord?
Next time.
Protect your computer.
Yes, thank you.
People.
Hello, Diane Castillo-White. I am, good evening. I'm on a few committees, and I'm not speaking for any of the committees. I'm just speaking for myself and from feedback that I've heard from my neighbors and citizens pertaining to the present tax attached to the water and sewer bill. My hope is that if this amount is increased, that the public be made aware of the need and the impact, and that they get a chance to vote on the increase. There was like I said, there was a lot of people that talked to me, and they were incredibly upset. Everything's rising in cost, and it's really hard for a household to make it in. They're already having to make decisions that they hadn't had to make in the past. So again, I'm hoping that that this is articulated, why the reasons why this is needed. A lot of people out there don't understand the fees that are associated with police and fire. And also, my point is I believe that there needs to be more public outreach and involvement pertaining to any other increases that are attached to the water and sewer bill. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak during the public comment? All right. Seeing none, we will close the public comment period for this evening. Okay.
There, so budget committee duties, you've accomplished some of them already. You've received the budget document, the budget message last week. You heard public comment both last Monday and this evening. A couple more to go, discuss and revise the budget as needed, and eventually approve the property tax levy. So with that, we'll dive into departmental reviews, community development, tourism and economic development division, planning division, the public safety, community livability, code compliance area, and the code specialties fund, not a division of the general fund. And that's where we'll start this evening. Page 125 in your book handles the regulatory oversight for the delegated building permit compliance requirements, the review and inspection services for plumbing, mechanical, building, and electrical. The fund has ordinary wage and benefit cost increases. There's no staffing changes. Volume is increasing in terms of permit activity, so the demand and use of our IGA with Gresham is, on a as-needed basis, so there's less use of that. And then we're looking at a software platform transition this fall. I didn't know whether you wanted to speak to that at all, Mike?
Yeah, so you'll notice when you go through the building codes, planning, public works, you'll see a line item that says InterGov and Bluebeam. Those two are systems that we use to do a large number of our permitting. The total cost of that software is, frankly, it's just unsustainable for where we're at right now. And so our contract runs out in November, and we're proposing to segue to the state-provided platform, which is a free platform. It's a Cella-base. So we should be able to save some money there come next budget cycle, and you'll see it run out. The contract will run out this budget cycle. So as we're looking into the future and we're trying to curb that downward slope that we've been seeing, these are some of the measures that we're taking to reduce those overhead expenditures and hopefully turn the tide before we get to the proverbial cliff, if you will.
Okay, and in your book, there's also these nice charts that Heather pulls together from all of the data, and I'm happy to steal it from her and put it in here for you to see, much more colorful than my graphs. But you can see the activity, it tends to be volatile. It can be, it's been declining somewhat, but a lot of ups and downs, so it's a challenging area sometimes to try and figure out what's going to be happening. It's also challenging in terms of the timing of when permits are requested and when they get closed out. And of course, it's right through the change of our fiscal year, so there's all kinds of those variables that have prior year and current year rollbacks and forths. So any questions on the Code Specialties Fund? As I mentioned, there's no staffing changes or other meaningful items.
Mr. Mann?
Not so much lately, but in the past, I've heard residents complaining about timeframes.
Turnaround times for permits and things?
How long is it? It takes X amount of time to get a permit. What they consider a simple permit, it's months and months and months.
I would say our building code department is pretty responsive, and the turnaround time is pretty good in comparison to other jurisdictions. Where we get caught up is sometimes like the applicant hasn't provided all the necessary information. And so our staff will then send information to them. It's a request for information to be able to process the permit. And sometimes they can get caught in that loop over and over again, especially if the information that they provide back is incomplete or didn't address the main concept of the question. And I think that's where most people get caught up, because permitting and building codes is a pretty complex regulatory engine in general, and sometimes providing those details, going back to your engineer or architect, having your engineer or architect design and draft it, it takes another round of revisions, if you will, and there's your 2 weeks or a month or 2 months later, then it comes back to us. We review it within like 2 to 3 weeks, get it back to the customer. But if there's something wrong, it has to go back in for another set of revisions. Their job is just to ensure that it meets the code.
And I, just to say, I don't hear it hardly at all now, I used to. So it must be getting better.
Hopefully, that's our hope.
Thank you.
Any questions on the budget? Okay, we will move on to planning. Oops, I'm sorry. Tourism and Economic Development Division, excuse me. Page 118. The functions in the title there, promote tourism. Then we've had a couple of travel Oregon grants. We've got one that we're in process now. They also work on the implementation of the Town Center Plan, Economic Development Coordination Promotion, heavily involved in city event promotions and the marketing of the Confluence site for the URA. Ordinary salary and cost benefit increases. As you know, the depot is where the visitor center operates out of. And they're in the midst of working on shuttle pilot and part of the Travel Oregon grant. So any questions on the Tourism and Economic Development Division, again, page 118. Okay, we'll move on to planning, which I was out of sequence there. Page 111. Expenditures related to both long-term, short-term development project review, several state mandates seemingly always to contend with. Ordinary salary, wage, and benefit cost increases. They're currently getting started on the city's economic opportunities analysis report update, and that's getting a funding from DLCD to help accomplish that. And they're the Halsey Street planning grant related to 2040 update. And this is also where our grant specialist is housed, as it were. So questions on planning, page 111. Oops.
Mr. Matt?
Eric, I'm assuming it's a typo on 114, bottom line is 233, 335. And on the detail one, it's 334, 835. Bottom 1500, page 17, isn't included in 114.
Sure, I've got a formula error somewhere.
And so what should it be?
I think it should be the 234, 835. Right? Unless we don't have the interest expense.
Yeah, it's that bottom last entry. I don't know which one's the right one, but
117 is the correct one. Yeah, that bottom line, on 114, I've got a formula error apparently. So anyway, we'll get that fixed.
Looks like the 1,500 wasn't carried to the 26-27.
Yeah. Formula error in my spreadsheet. Okay, no other.
Mr. White?
Yeah, on 114, under professional services, 125,000. What exactly does that entail?
Moving back to page 117, it's broken out there right sort of in the middle of the page there.
So a large portion of that, the 65,000 is for the economic opportunity analysis grant. The 25 is put in there as a placeholder for any miscellaneous consulting services that we may need throughout the year. And the 30,000 is for middle housing development, middle housing code development.
Okay.
Question? On that 65,000, I'm just gonna ask this question, don't take it personal or anything. What happens if we don't spend it and don't do it? Is it part of a state requirement that we do this,
It's a
or?
grant, it's grant funded. So it's an economic opportunities analysis that's funded by DLCD.
And is it 100% funded or
I
50/50?
think it's partially funded with a match.
Okay. Just asking.
Okay, we're done with planning.
Any other questions on planning?
Okay, well, just like anything that we've covered Monday night or tonight, always come back to something if it comes up, so. This one is the code compliance officer that is supervised and handled under community development. It traditionally and has always been carried in what was the police department. When we had a police department, we kept the expenditures there. We'll be focusing on police quite a bit later on, so we won't go into that now, but the code compliance function, there's no changes effectively, it's just ordinary COLA. So the executive department, which has traditionally been organized in the budget long before I got here, legislative, judicial, legal, general government, administration, community services, starts on page 42. Just for perspective, general fund department costs, you see the relative portions of the cost, the big ones being public safety, of course. These are the items that make up the executive department. And legislative is generally always the one that wins the trophy for being in the smallest expenditure down near at the end. It's all the costs associated with supporting the city council. Judicial is our court function, legal department, community services, everyone's favorite department for recreation, general government, and then administration. We'll look at these briefly. So, as I mentioned, legislative is on page 44, mayor and council expenses. This is status quo, routine, ordinary operations. There are no staff in this function. It varies a little bit year to year. There's sometimes a few additional expenses in a election year versus not, but it generally just comes along at a very even keel. So, any questions for anybody on the budget related to legislative?
What is the special department expense? On page 45, 46,600.
Turn the page to 40. Turn the page to 46. There's a listing there sort of in the middle of the page where it says 8211. Those are the items that comprise that roll-up that is on the page 45 that you were looking at. Okay. Judicial, again, court function, municipal court function, the judge, appointed attorneys, our court clerk, there's one FTE in this department, Marissa, who administers the court operation for us. No salary, ordinary salary and benefit changes, no staffing count changes. Last year, the court-appointed attorney rate was increased and as well reflected in this year's budget. So again, the summary is on page 47 and the more detail is on the next page on 48. Questions on judicial? And boy, I was way off. I missed my page number. Wow. Oh, I must have lost the 4 when I was editing that. Yeah, sorry about that.
Mr. Bent?
So the increase in judicial, these appointed attorneys went from 30 to 49. And I know I talked to Mike about it, and I know we have to provide that, but well, that's a big increase.
We were, to say it from a liability standpoint, but we were very much in questionable compliance with state requirements, given as little as we were paying per hour for court-appointed attorneys. So we needed to raise it quite substantially to get where it needed to be. Okay. 49 is legal. Legal department, we have a half-time administrative assistant. It's where we capture the legal services for our city attorney, Ed Trumpke, Jordan Ramus, as well as the other costs. Again, the summary is on page 49, and then the detail components that roll up to it, which hopefully, if I don't have another formula error, are on page 50. Again, no staffing changes, minimal other, status quo, routine and ordinary operations, my theme song. Questions?
Personnel services, it looks like the budgeted dollars have gone down for the position, and then there's a huge increase in the Blue Cross medical benefit. What is that?
The prior occupant of that position, shall we say, was a retiree and wasn't participating on the medical side. The current occupant qualifies for that, and so that's that one line is sort of the major differential. The person who retired was at a higher hourly rate, so that's why the salary level is lower, because the current person is at the beginning of the salary range, so. Okay. General government, page 51, the next page, pages. Again, the summary items are on page 51, and then the detailed breakout is on actually the next 2 pages. There's no staff that are specifically in this department. Used, again, sort of general government and memberships for League of Oregon Cities, Portland Inc., Regional Disaster Preparedness Organization, interfund loan expenses. We moved the council-approved sponsorship payments to outside events. We moved it here so that it wasn't complicating Marley's management of her budget. So they're there in the middle of page 52. It's sort of routine and ordinary again. Same kinds of stuff carry over from year to year. No COLA or wage increases, since there are none in this department. Any questions on general government?
Ms. Lenz?
Who is our RDPO representative right now?
Eric, you know, I don't.
I don't know. I don't include it as part of the budget process, so
Are we actually taking advantage of it?
You were last time, right? So I volunteered to do it, but I can't, their meetings are during the day when I'm teaching and I can't
Okay.
attend.
That's fine, just curious.
Need somebody who doesn't have a job, because they meet like at 1 o'clock. I just can't. I teach.
I was able to block stuff out and move around. One of the things they
The
do,
big thing was this interest expense on 153. Sorry.
talk later,
No, go ahead. You're there.
the revenue source we could get there.
Yeah, it was $106 in interest, 106,000 on interest expense.
Yes.
That's the difference between what used to be for last year versus what it is now.
Loans.
I said,
yeah, this
if
is
I
the.
can recapture that 53,000 in interest on the triple net loan of that building.
These are the interest expenses for the interfund loan repayment from the general fund to the Parks SDC fund. So this is where the expense for those, the interest cost is being booked. And this coming year is first year for those 2 different $150,000 loans. The interfund loans, the city has always taken the practice that we make the fund that was lending the money whole. So we pay them what they would have been paid had the money been in their fund and in the state pool earning what the state pool earned. So it's, that's the estimate. What it actually will be, I have to chase down and calculate and so forth, because of course it changes every month.
If I may ask, what kind of rate do we get in that state pool?
Last time I looked at it, it was 4.2, I think, so. But like I say, it changes every month.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, other questions on general government?
Back to you, Ms. Clance.
I'll talk to Kara later, there's some income we can get from art.
All right.
Okay, administration, page 54, you just keep turning the page. I also found at least one error on my part on that, but I'm not going to volunteer it. I'm sure somebody else will find something else. Anyway, administration is city manager, city recorder, human resource functions, no staffing changes, minimal other changes. HR is preparing to gear up for possible police department hiring, depending on what policy choices are made in the near future. Otherwise, it's status quo, routine and ordinary operations. So, any questions on administration? Again, the same structure, the summary items, and then the following pages hopefully roll over properly.
Mr. Wilcox?
Yeah, this, your mistake, Eric. Under recreation program, page 58.
We aren't quite there
We're
yet.
not quite there yet.
Oh, okay.
Just one more minute and we'll be there for you.
Mr. Bench, you had another question on administration?
Yeah, a follow-up. I know I sent this question to Mr. Weston, and he said he'd get back to me on that. The equipment under $5,000 and his budget at $10,500. That rings a bell, Mike?
Gotcha.
Yeah. What's the question?
What's included in it?
Well,
What we're proposing?
yeah, how did it go from 2,500 to 10,500?
We're in administration.
Page 54, in materials and services, fifth item down.
It's not really demonstrated out, but it was identified as like potential moving expenses. So if we move from the 2 offices that we have in downtown, either into this building or into 921 Buxton, that's what accounts for that additional in that number, in that line item.
I'm just in for solid follow-up, so.
All right. Anything else on administration? Okay.
Okay. Everyone's favorite department, of course, recreation. Probably see yourself somewhere up there in the crowd. A little bit of, what is it, where's Waldo? In the case, community services, recreation department, page 58. Expenditures related to the recreation programs, variety of special events, coordination of volunteers, ordinary wage and benefit cost increases. This is where the 0.1 of the 2.1 FTE increase that was described in the budget message and in the cover memo, this is where the 0.1 part of that increase is, and it's to increase the recreation coordinator's hours, 4 hours a week. That's where that's proposed. And then, as I mentioned, movies in the park, other community events. So, Mr. Wilcox, I know you're primed for a question in this department since you gave us the prelim.
How do you account for the $10,000 increase between the 2 years with a 0.1, adding 4 hours?
Why?
I'm sorry, what now?
He's asking about the additional the 0.1 FTE adds $10,000.
Compare this last year to this year, it's a $10,000 raise.
It's essentially 4 hours extra each pay period is what we had equated. I think when we looked at it, it was fairly nominal on the backside.
What I came up with was, and maybe the current year budget number is incorrect, which, you know, that's been known to happen on my part. But what I had calculated was that it was I believe a $8,700 cost differential as a result of the 0.1 change in the hours. Now, the hourly rate may also have changed, but I don't recall off the top of my head. And of course, you know, there's the ordinary COLA and step increases before you get to being topped out in the salary range. There's a 5% step increase. So it's probably a combination of all of those items, but I would have to go back into my spreadsheets to look. Other questions on recreation?
Paul, did you have another one? Counselor White.
Page 58, the top of the page, the recreational coordinator was it previously?
That was the one I thought we were just talking about.
Yeah.
Previously 0.5.
Yeah, I want to make sure, because when we had that council meeting where we had department heads in, that was a request from that department.
Right, yes, it was 0.5 in the current year budget.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions on recreation? Okay. Finance, of course, that notorious dangerous location. No staffing changes, ordinary salary cost benefit increases, increased audit costs, which is typically the case as GASB keeps adding to the list. Otherwise, routine and ordinary activities, again, finance, budget, audit, payroll, receivables, payables, utility billing, risk management, et cetera. It's on page 63 is the summary lines, and then the details should roll over from page 64. Questions on finance?
Counselor White.
I'm just curious, how long does the audit take?
The audit, they're here for about a week doing testing, what they refer to as interim testing usually in the March, April timeframe. And then they're back, usually it's in the October timeframe to deal with what we refer to as the year-end balances. And they're usually here for 3-4 days. Since COVID, a lot more of it is remote because a lot of it is documentation anyway. It consumes more of the staff's time for the interim period because they're doing more of their transaction testing and their procedure review. The year-end one is much more my time because we're dealing with what was the actual for the year. I don't know how to quantify. I spend hours and hours and hours on it, but I don't know whether you're looking for how much time staff spends or how much time the auditors spend.
Yeah, it was more directed at the auditor's time.
Oh, well, there's a team of 3 to 4 of them, varies. I mean, they're not there from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. In a block, but it's a lot of professional time, shall we say. Okay.
Required and painful would be the
Yeah,
other.
I know. Understand the word.
It's like every receipt, every expense.
Okay, other questions on?
I'm just curious,
Oh, that's right.
on 63, where it talks about professional services and other contract services, what are those services?
If you flip over to 64,
I did, but I couldn't find
Yeah,
it.
that's
Should be like the audit.
what we were just talking about with the budget.
below the 8220, it's the financial audit. The GASB 75 valuation reporting, it's a fee that we generally pay to McMillan, I can't say it.
McMillan.
And the arbitrage bond arbitrage reporting compliance that we generally have to file related to the general obligation bonds. Other questions on finance?
Mr. Bent?
Yeah, I would just have to say, out of all the years I've been doing this, the finance department seems to be the most stable, consistent, predictable fund of all of them. So I commend you.
I think that goes back to the definition of routine and ordinary.
Gotta be doing something right.
Well, we try, but, the audit process, we're, I think, year 35 for the GFOA award that bring to the city, to the council every year, and that is because the finance staff does a consistent job day in, day out, following the process and the procedures, so that when the auditors come in, whatever they pull for testing is available. And, you know, so I don't want to take credit for that accomplishment, because without them doing it day in, day out, it would be not possible. So anyway, IT services, flip the page, 65 is the next one, IT. Just what it says, our computer hardware, software, licensing, security cameras, SCADA system support, citywide networking. There's no staffing changes, ordinary wage and benefit cost increases. We have our ongoing cybersecurity network hardening project. And some increased increased efforts, and worked with folks in Public Works on the SCADA security upgrades. Department of Homeland Security is increasingly concerned about security of municipal utility delivery services, and so there's of course an IT component to that SCADA access, and so that's been a project that's been going on and expanding. Questions on IT services? Again, the summaries on page 65 and the details are on the next 2 pages.
Ben?
Is there something available for IT similar to what the changes you were doing for software for codes?
You mean to, like, you're talking, are there
Some from the state or something?
free platforms out there? The trick is,
In other words, is there anything like that available for the IT?
I don't think that there is any kind of government sponsored software system that we can use on this front. You know, we have a series of software platforms that we do utilize, such as like the Placer AI or the InterGov is a permitting software that the state building code department is what we're talking about utilizing. So the state building code had a mandate that all building permits were digitized. You could access them digitally. And in that, they had funding to develop this software program. And initially, that software program was awful. It was probably, there's 4-letter words attached to it. So it was really bad. And so none of the cities even wanted to touch it with a 10-foot pole, but over the span of the 5 or 6 year period since they started doing that, it's actually, I think they started it in 2017, 18, I want to say. I'm probably off by a couple years, but over the span of that 5 to 6, 7 year period, it's gotten better. And so now it's a reasonable assumption to think that we might be able to cut out $100,000 or $200,000 by transitioning over to that platform. So it's a little different than what this is. This is kind of more firewalls and servers and the software like Microsoft 365 that we use on a daily basis, Adobe that we use to do our newsletter, and a lot of our stuff has to be saved into Adobe before we send it out, sort of thing. So it's basically our operating software as an entire organization, I think. It's supported through this agency.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else on IT?
Not on 18.
No? Councilor White?
Just a comment, I'm just amazed at how often we have to replace the computers and the price tag associated with it. You know, I compare that to my home computer, and I'm shocked. I go to Free Peak and you can get a really good computer for a couple $100. I've only had to replace it once.
Yes. I would say it's on a replacement pattern, and I think Jeremy already took off, but it's a 3 to 5 year cycle for keeping those computers and everything up to speed and virus free. I think the longer I'm not an IT specialist, so I wish I had Jeremy here to pull from information, but
There's also a different class of hardware that you use in the work environment versus what's generally available for home computer use. So there's a number of factors that make what we acquire a bit more than what you might get as the best deal somewhere.
it all has to get saved.
Surprised that he had to look at my computer and he couldn't believe the software that was installed on it, especially the security side of it.
Happy or not?
He was impressed with it. I'm not computer geek either, but that's what he told me.
Eric, I thought you said your computer was like over 10 years old last night, or 2 nights ago.
You're saying it was going
No,
slow. I said it was going slow because it was one of the older ones.
Okay.
The 10 was related to Windows 10 operating system,
Okay.
and Microsoft is continually cranky when you log in and you're not on the current version.
Because Microsoft transitioned to 365.
I know.
They don't like you if you're not on it.
Mr. Mako.
Dovetailing on Councilor White was talking about, maybe we could get kind of a breakdown of inventory
It's coming your way.
coming our way of the computer equipment
It was
specifically.
before, right?
Yeah.
There we go. Thank you.
Yeah, it's here. We're gonna hand it out.
Other questions on IT?
Yes, Mr. Bent?
Mike, is there a state run where you can buy computer equipment from the state through their purchasing power of the whole state?
There are
State contracts.
that the state uses with certain suppliers that we can piggyback on a government contract to purchase those. And I haven't really found that they save us a lot of money, but they're out there and we can use them for computers, furnishings, desks, tables, chairs, office equipment, and we just piggyback on the state contracts for those things. We still have to pay the same rate. It's it might be a slightly reduced rate, but we still have to pay for the materials.
Other questions on IT? Okay, just refresher on, we kind of looked at a lot of the smaller bars there, and so now we're gonna move into the ones that are the bigger ones there, public safety related. So in the composition of the revenue, as we've talked about previously, various sources to fund all of those bars on the previous page. So public safety, fire contract is page 92. We talked a little bit about this on Monday night, but it's as I mentioned before, it's sort of the simplest, most straightforward budget that I have to do every year because it's basically one line that rolls over to the other page because it's just the Gresham Fire Services IGA. It's a known item. We're currently in the one-year extension that was done last year when the 10-year IGA expired. In last fall, a new 5-year extension was negotiated, and that 5-year extension starts this July 1 with this contract. So we're about to enter year one of the 5-year IGA. This was the 1-year extension that we again, it's on page 92. Really isn't much there. That's the I guess less than desirable, shall we say, trend, but that's the reality of the cost trend. Questions on the fire contract?
Mr. Bent?
Is Gresham, if I'm not mistaken, are they still at 1.8? We're at 1.57 now?
You're saying per capita costs?
Yeah.
They have,
Things I was reading,
Saying 1.5.
like 1 point, Gresham was paying 1.8 after that latest.
yeah, they have a levy. They have a levy on top of their,
It was after the levy was approved, it jumped them up to like 1.8.
yeah, I don't know what their levy total is, but, I think when you look at what ours is next year, I think we're estimating at about $3.5 million for this coming year for fire services. I think that breaks down to close to what you're saying. It's about $1.60 to $1.70, I would imagine, per thousand.
Yeah, and it says,
It was, like last year, it was 3.25, and that equated to about $1.56 per thousand. And that's consistent with what our old IGA with Gresham was, and that's why we got a continuation of the previous IGA, right, a 5-year extension of it. But it has the 7.5 or 7.3 or 4% increase every year instead of the 10 plus that we see on the Multnomah County contract.
I see on 92, the first paragraph, it says Gresham's are at 1.8 per thousand.
It might, the fire, it might be, and where they're trying to take it,
Is 3.73.
73 or higher is where they're projecting it needs to go in order to sustain fire protection, given where they're at right now.
Another question, if I may, on this, when we have it out there and we have just a flat rate a year, simple 1 or 2 line item, how does that impact our PERS rate? And also, what does it do to our liability?
You're saying contract versus if we had it run in-house?
Right. And then also just the fact that since we don't, and Eric, you would probably know, obviously, the PERS rate for firemen. Is it high like the police?
Oh, yeah, it's the first responders category is police, fire, and I think they've now added 911 dispatchers into that PERS category. So there's a rate for general service employees, and then there's a rate for, it's referred to as first responders, but it's the old police fire rate.
So when we're getting these bienniums, I noticed you said we're gonna pay $412,000, if I'm not mistaken, more in PERS. How does an IGA versus our own?
We don't pay, we don't pay a PERS contribution on our contract fees that we pay.
Right.
It's in their costs that they make be calculating what they're charging us, but we don't pay it directly.
Yeah, so instead of, so what we get, like within their contract will be, you're gonna get X amount of employees, right? But that employee cost is the cost of their salary plus their PERS, plus their benefits, plus everything else, plus some admin time to, deal with their HR pick,
So
and everything else. That all gets combined in
It'd be
that.
interesting to know what our own would be versus having the same exact services of our own versus an IGA.
Well, we're working on that.
And it seems like the IGA obviously is, they're putting part of that cost for sure into it. But how does it impact us versus comparison between our own versus theirs?
Right,
An
wouldn't,
IGA.
right, and I think you asked a question similar to that via email last week maybe, and I provided you kind of where the printout of the attachment to the police IGA kind of shows you how much they're charging us per officer and per unit sort of thing. And I have copies of them here tonight. We can hand them out to all the other commissioners, but you kind of see some of those added costs in the contract too, so.
And in the same respect, ours versus an IGA, does an IGA relinquish a lot of potential liability that we would have to, if we had it ourselves, pay? Would the city the city attorney be able to, in other words, if, the police got sued.
Liability is going to be based on what's in the IGA terms and conditions. So it's not a one answer fits all IGAs. So we would have to go back and look at fire IGA, and there's a whole section related to liabilities.
Okay, so there is a factor in that IGA that states the liability issue.
There is several paragraphs that talk about the two parties and so forth, but it doesn't have a dollar amount attached to it. So it's not going to tell you we're paying this much more related to the liability provision, just like it doesn't spell out what we're paying for the PERS.
I think all municipal agencies, we walk around with a target on our back, and so that's why we have significant insurance coverage, because, somebody trips over a stick in the road, it's somebody's fault, right?
Yeah, and since I don't see those IGAs, I can't see what you're seeing.
Yeah.
So just open that door for a question. Do they become more liable? Are we more liable with our own than we would be with an IGA?
Well, typically our attorneys and their attorneys are throwing in clauses left, right, and center to protect liabilities, so there's clauses in there that address those.
But I will say, when there's an IGA, these guys look at it, the attorneys look at it, and then it goes to the council. And so that would be the best place to review it, would be there. Yeah. Because then you could comment on it, if you had any questions or anything.
Okay.
The fire contract, the projections, which I understand are totally projections, is that assuming we stay with an IGA?
Well, the fire one is one of the very few items in here that I know the cost versus it being, an estimate or an inflation factor. It's spelled out in the contract for as long as we're in the contract.
Okay.
The new 5-year agreement and the fire task force, they're part of what was negotiated was that there's a shorter termination period, whereas the old contract, it was multi-year. So whether we stay the entire 5-year term, I think that is dependent on the work that the fire task force.
Mrs. Timmerman?
Go ahead.
Just to let you know, you can actually go find the PERS employer contribution rates on their website. Gresham is about 5% more for police and fire than it is for general.
Thanks.
Councilor White?
Yeah, Eric, how much of this year's bill for fire, the 3.4 million, is, how much of the public safety fee is covering that bill? Do you know?
Not off the top of my head, but I may have that on a spreadsheet that I can look for maybe during the break.
Okay. And then the rest of it's being paid out of the general fund?
Well,
through property taxes?
All of it's being paid for out of the general fund.
So, we could do just a quick math problem here in our heads. Ultimately, it's about $10 million for the public safety, and fire's at 3.5. So you're looking at probably like 35% of that public safety fee. So for that, and then the rest is, but you also have BOEC, which serves both. So that either way you want to, 4 million. So you're at 40% fire and 60% police, maybe.
Gail, under public comment, was talking about policy and not so much looking at the line items. So it sounds like the policy or the direction that's being proposed is that we join a district, and then all that money that's being paid out of the general fund with property taxes goes somewhere else.
It could be repurposed to expand your police force potentially, add additional units there, augment our parks and our other services throughout that we're lacking on. Yes, it would be very beneficial for where we're short-staffed. Parks right now, according to our master plan, we're 2.5 employees short to be able to maintain our parks at, the levels that they're supposed to be maintained, We have shortages in just about every department, and we're looking at shortages in the future because of rising costs. So, how we get to those, I think, over time, we'll end up having to shrink down to address to be quite frank, to address the limitations that are imposed by measures 5 to 50, which set our tax rate, unless we're gonna grow out of it. So unless we're gonna expand our urban growth boundary and start promoting growth on a high level, then we're gonna have to figure out how to live within that 3% annual increase.
Yeah, we're going to get into a lot of the policy possibilities here in just a few more slides when we get into the police piece.
Yeah, if I could just respond to that, it's really scary, the thought of having to have the additional costs of a district, and then they're still talking about pursuing tax reform with 5 and 50. Combine those together, and I don't think our citizens could afford either one, let alone both. So I just wanted to get that in there.
Question?
Just a typo, Eric, on page 92, paragraph 3 and paragraph 5, the fiscal years are jumped ahead by one on both.
Okay.
He's thinking ahead.
I'm sure I made another error in my search and replace routine. Okay, well, we're going to dive into more. So, police management, your budget as proposed. There's multiple options related to police, so it's going to get confusing and complicated here. But page 71 is the reestablishment of the what had been the command or the management division of the Troutdale Police Department, and the terminology that we're trying to use to distinguish between this and what's in some of the other options related to the alternate budget is this is a ramp up. The other one that we'll get to in a minute is a start up. So different terminology here, but this is part of the official proposed budget, is to begin the process of moving toward restarting the Troutdale Police Department. This would be this is the 2 of the 2.1 FTE increase that we talked about for the increase in the general fund. Here are we talked about the 0.1 in recreation, here's where the 2 are. And this is to hire a chief and a lieutenant to begin the process of getting organized, getting prepared to start a police department in the future. That, of course, is a policy decision. This is just a proposal, and this is what we're, in terms of approaching that process. Division 70 was traditionally where the command, the management of the police department was up until 2016 when it transitioned to the sheriff's department. So, and then page 72 is the, oops, got my page number wrong. Page 74, excuse me, is the proposal for the existing, what we refer to as the Police Operations Division. There's no staffing changes in this division in the proposed budget going forward. This is where we pay the BOEC contract or IGA fees. This is where we pay the MCSO IGA fees. The rest of it is the continuing on routine or ordinary. Again, the MCSO contract is the big change in that item. This is the expenditure chart that we have here showing the changes, and we're now seeing where the costs are exceeding the trend line. The alternative budget, which is what I was mentioning in terms of options, that's on page 76. It's there to try and address the, of course, immediate question that is, if we go down this path, what's the cost going to look like? What is it? What are we talking about in terms of a limited scope or limited capability Police Department. And so we put these two divisions in as the alternative, limited police department. They're not part of the totals that are in the proposed budget, but it's to try and illustrate, okay, well, if we go this path, what's it going to look like? So this would then be the chief and lieutenant we just talked about, plus 2 sergeants, plus half-time admin support. The operations division, then of course would be where the patrol officers are in the limited Troutdale Police Department, again, as we outlined in the budget message and the page 76 where it's outlined. It's the 8 police officers and the halftime records support. This amount plus the 4.5 on the previous page, that's the 13 additional FTEs to the general fund that I'd mentioned in the cover letter and in the budget message. That would be added. It also would be that, okay, the MCSO IGA would be canceled because we would no longer be using them to provide those services. And then all the various costs. Now, again, it's provided to try and address, well, if we go this route, what's this going to look like? We're not saying this is what we're asking you to do tonight, per se. And I'm sure I've stepped all over your message.
I'll go ahead.
I have a quick question. On the slide we're looking at, is this reasonable in terms of staffing, or would there be additional support staffing that would need to be put in?
As a startup, what we've identified as what we can afford currently, which is trying to stay within about a $5 million window. And we're still technically over what we can afford when you add in the fire contract as well. But ideally, it brings it into a realm of feasibility. What it gives us is essentially 4 different squads, 2 officers per squad, plus a sergeant, managing each squad, plus a lieutenant and a chief potentially managing different squads as well. So the way that the rotation and staffing kind of works is you would have a minimum of 2 officers on. More than likely, you would have 3 to even 5 officers on, and overlapping schedules and shifts. Where we run into trouble, and this is why I can't guarantee that I'll have 24-hour service all the time, is if like, was it the Fair Leave Oregon? Is it
Paid leave Oregon.
Paid Leave Oregon. Paid Leave Oregon comes into play. Someone officer has a baby and they're out with their beloved for 3 months. All of a sudden, I've got a staffing shortage. Now all of a sudden, I have to either offer overtime, or I have to get support, or I need to bring in a reserve officer. Some of the challenges with the department that we're talking about is we're probably going to be a bit of a revolving door, because we're not going to be paying the same high elevated rates that Multnomah County or Portland or even Gresham are paying. And so when those larger organizations are looking for, to augment their police force with additional services, well, they're going to throw their fishing line over in Troutdale because we've just trained up officers and we can't pay that much. But the bottom line is that we aren't a city of 100,000 or 150 or 3 or 4 or 6 or 700,000 people. We are a city of 16,000 people.
Some of those people are also having budget shortages and they have to change things. So.
Exactly. And so I think as it goes, in the way I kind of explain it is we're just a little too big for our belt right now, and we need to tighten it up a bit. And so what we're proposing is sustainable for what we can do. Once it's there and established, I believe that instantly the chief and others are going to be asking for more. Right, and I think that's why we made the proposal of the 50, 20, 30, just kind of like a policy guardrail framework to just say, hey, here's your base funding. If you need more, then we need to raise more to augment that through either like a police operating levy, or, we go through some other means to augment that service, whether it be police, whether it be fire, whether it be parks. And so it's just kind of establishing the framework the allocations in the future so that I don't have departments fighting over the same resources and then robbing from Peter to pay Paul, and then all of a sudden the operational framework of the organization no longer functions because we've dumped all of our resources, all of our eggs in one basket, and now it no longer functions, right? And so my hope is that by establishing those guardrails, and which is a policy decision that the council will need to make, it allows us to set some parameters for an incoming department that will be forming and trying to vie for resources.
And what about things like vehicles?
Yeah, we have 2 vehicle purchases on currently. If you look at the limited police budget, you'll see vehicle purchases in there. I believe even with the capital expenditures of purchasing those vehicles, we can still get started under this model for cheaper than what we're paying in a contract for Multnomah County. I will say that we will be losing all the services and benefits that Multnomah County brings to the table. The kind of, when you think about the size of their departments, the training of their officers, all the capabilities and specialties that they bring to the table, we likely won't have that level of sophistication, and we certainly won't have the redundancy built into our staffing plan to get there, right? So there will be shortages, in my opinion, when we think about some of the gang investigations, when we think about all the services that Multnomah County can draw from. Being such a large organization like that, we just do not have it. And so in that sense, what I would propose is that that's when we fall back on a mutual aid agreement with the Sheriff's Department for assistance through some of those instances.
Don't we pay, residents here pay Multnomah County taxes? And so shouldn't some of those services be what we pay for?
Very true.
I have a whole series of slides with numbers that I think I will run through with you, and then will obviously be lots of questions, but I think we'll then probably want to take a break and then come back and dive into questions. So if I can move forward here a little bit. So we talked about, it's outlined in the document. We're closer to what we can afford versus what we might like to have. A lot of the specialty activities we wouldn't be able to fund, particularly in the beginning. So this is one of the first.
Hang on a second, Victoria.
We don't pay for the resource officer. Reynolds School District pays for that. We don't pay anything.
It's an IGA that pays for 3/4 of the officers. That's what they used to do. I mean, we don't have the IGAs at all anymore. The sheriff's office has them now. But when we had school resource officers, they paid for essentially the school year. They didn't pay for the full cost of the officers.
Well, on the budget, and it's in their budget, and we pay the resource officers.
Yes, there's an IGA that pays a contracted fee to the MCSO for school resource officers. When the city had the IGA with Reynolds School District, they paid for 3/4 of the annual cost of the officers. We're not going to have the capacity or ability to do that. Now, that may be something that we can explore in year 2, 3, 4, or 5, but it's certainly not going to be something we can do in year 1. That's why I was trying to be very clear about what you aren't going to get. This is not going to be the 2015 version of the Troutdale Police Department. We transferred 28 employees to the sheriff's office. This is half that.
I'm sorry, it's not making sense to me. If the school district is paying for the SROs, we're not paying for them now. That's no different than the limited police department. We're not paying for it then either.
The police officers were.
Yeah, let me clarify really quick. Reynolds School District has a contract with Multnomah County School District to provide those SROs, right? So we have no input on that. We, Troutdale, cannot provide them. But Multnomah County may still hold forward that contract with Reynolds. So Multnomah County still may honor that contract. So you might still have your SROs. It just won't be coming from Troutdale right away. Potentially in the future, if we're able to grow our police department through any series of contracts or things like what Multnomah County Sheriff's has, then potentially we might have the potential to add those positions locally versus through the county sheriff's department. Does that address the question?
Well, I'm just saying it's not something we're going to lose. We're still, I don't know.
Well, it's not something
I don't have
we're-
Reynolds' budget yet this year.
Correct. It's not something that we are offering with our limited, so let me just clarify. It's not something we're offering with our, you might not lose it.
When you have, we don't have the majority of students anyway. We've got Fairview in there, we've got Gresham in there, we've got parts of Portland in there.
So let's back up and address this section, because there seems to be some questions about what we're losing, right? So detective units. Multnomah County is still gonna have detective units. If there's a major crime or something to that effect, you're gonna fall back on a mutual aid agreement, hopefully to tap those resources and help with an investigation. Our officers, our sergeants can do their own report writing. They can do a portion of the detective work in-house. The school resource officers currently contract with Multnomah County Sheriff's Department. That'll probably stay with Multnomah County Sheriff's Department because I just won't have the resources right now to provide that service. In the future, maybe that changes. And maybe Reynolds wants to change their IGA and contract with Troutdale in the future, but currently their IGA is with Multnomah County and I wouldn't have anything to do with that. Beach Patrol, we have Oregon Patrol Services that do our beach patrol for us currently. I intend to retain that and keep that going. SWAT, Troutdale will not have its own SWAT force. We would rely on Multnomah County's SWAT team for that, and that would be one of those mutual aid pieces that we could potentially hit for again. And I mentioned this previously, we wouldn't have the East Metro Gang Enforcement Task Force on our staff, but Multnomah County has that, Portland has that. We might be able to tap those resources through mutual aid agreements with those forces, and I caveat might. So I'm sure our officers will have to do a lion's share of the investigative work and the patrol work, detective work, and those sort of things, and then possibly use those services to augment our own. And then the transit TriMet officer, that is, now I'm trying to remember how that works. It's TriMet.
I'm sorry if I miscommunicated or confused people. What I was trying to illustrate is these were all things that we had in 2015 as part of the Troutdale Police Department. They will not be part of the new startup. That's what I was trying to illustrate. I wasn't trying to illustrate what was going to happen to Reynolds School District. These were all things that we used to have as part of those 28 FTE that transferred. We're not going to be able to do these things with the 13 people that we're proposing. That was what I was trying to illustrate. We used to have a TriMet officer. We used to have gang enforcement. We used to have members on the county SWAT team. We used to have beach patrol. We used to have 2 school resource officers. We used to have 2 detectives. The current alternate budget doesn't propose to provide any of those things because I didn't want anybody to feel as though, oh, I'm going to approve getting our police department back and have an expectation that it was going to be like it was in 2015. It certainly wouldn't be like that year one. Whether over time the council and the community want to grow it to something similar to what it was in 2015, that of course is a policy choice. I'm trying to make clear what the expectation is of, okay, if you wanted to do this alternative budget, what you're getting, and more importantly, what you wouldn't be getting, so that there's no surprise later. Well, wait a minute, where is this? We used to have this. Well, yeah, we won't have this anymore. So again, my apologies if I didn't communicate that clearly in the memo or in the writing or in the write-up on page 76. And it's all subject to change, of course. This is just an attempt to try and show why should we consider the police startup option? The Multnomah County IGA, just the IGA costs, none of the rest of the costs in that department is that one line. The proposed startup option with the 13 FTE is what's there in the blue. The first year, it's 720,000 less cost to do it that way. Now, again, as Mike talked about, we don't have all of the county's specialties and resources and so forth, but we're also not paying that IGA fee. And then I got to pick some number, so I just use 3% cost increase. It's going to be more. The one thing I can assure you is that these will not be the numbers. That's the one guarantee I can give you. And of course, it's always going to be that it'll take longer and it will cost more because there's going to be surprises that we didn't plan on. But I'm saying that cost grows by 3% a year. I already know the county's IGA costs, those first 3 years are known numbers. They're baked into the IGA, they're black and white. I continued the same rate increase for the subsequent years because, that's what they had been growing. They are definitely estimates. So it was an attempt to try and explain, well, why should we consider the alternative of doing a police startup and adding 13 people to the general fund? Because I know that's certainly going to be a concern. We'll come back to this, I'm sure. There's a few more slides. Let me get through that, and then I think it would be appropriate for a break, Mr. Chair. Okay. So this is trying to look at the costs of the public safety fee. This is the status quo option. This is not doing the police startup. It's the $32. The way I calculate it, it's going to take us $63 the following year to deal with the public safety cost, 72, 81, up to 92. And I've got a recap for this that we can look at back. So that's the status quo option. The limited PD option, the one that we were just talking about implementing, it doesn't have the CSO IGA in it, of course, but we still have the Gresham Fire IGA. Still the $32 we're talking about for this year, but 36, 39, 42. It's still going up, but it's not at 92 versus the prior one. This one was referenced previously about a fire district. So conversations about, okay, well, what if a fire district gets voted on and approved by the voters effective July 1st, 2028? What does that do to our general fund public safety costs? Yes, I understand it costs the individual homeowners and taxpayers more because they're going to be paying something more on their tax bill. But as it relates to the general fund, well, all of a sudden, our public safety fee can go from $36 to $3. And then what I think is the more likely scenario, if that occurred, would be, okay, there's the fire district, and rather than continuing to go at 3%, you see I have this 1.25% growth, and that's under the expectation that the council and the community is going to want to expand that coverage and try and ensure that there's 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week coverage. So if we end up expanding that police footprint, it wouldn't be 13 anymore. But so then the public safety fee, rather than being at $3 that first year that there's a fire district, that's at 16, 16, 17. That's just to try and illustrate the options. So this is them recapped on that page to try and say, well, if we don't do anything, we're at 32, 63, 72, 81, 92. All I can say for that line is it's not as bad as it is in Fairview. Fairview, they're at 116 when they get to the end of that calculation. They're dealing with $55 a month starting in July. That's just an attempt to try and show you what, again, estimates, not guarantees, they're all subject to policy choices.
And can I just throw out one more piece on that before we move on, is that if we bring, like Eric just mentioned with Fairview, their contract with Multnomah County which is also unsustainable, runs out, I think, next August or September.
It's an oddball date.
And they're gonna be looking at what they can afford and seeing, maybe teaming up with us, maybe not, maybe they stay with Multnomah County. I don't, again, diving into a crystal ball of speculation, but there might be an opportunity there where we can partner as small cities. And if that does happen, well, maybe that adds another squad to our police force that augments Fairview, and then we have 3 patrols on instead of 2 patrols, you know? So just kind of thinking it in the back of your mind that maybe there's opportunities to potentially grow this service, you know? So it might start small, but it might grow as services provide. Maybe there's contracts with the federal patrol services for patrolling the parks across the river. I don't know, maybe there's options. So, but getting it started is kind of the key. So.
Yes, sir. Quick question. On these numbers, Eric, were you taking into consideration Mike's proposal of like the 50, 30, 20? And is that why you still have a...
Yeah, so, right, I should have stopped. Thank you for asking that. So you see there's 50% of the taxes I'm calculating is offsetting the police cost, 20% of the property taxes offsetting the fire portion. What I was suggesting that had been part of the conversation is, okay, in the year that the fire district comes into play, there's that 20% goes to zero. The conversation was, okay, let's take 10% of that and add it to the police part and 10% to the all other. Right now, we run all the rest of the general fund with the 30% allocation. This would split it to be a 60-40. Again, that's a policy choice. It's a program, but that's, and I'm sorry, I forgot to.
So that $16 would supplement the overages over that extra 10%, is that my understanding?
Correct, yeah, that's my calculation. If we use 60% of what I'm estimating the property taxes to be to cover my estimated costs of what the costs are, all of which are not knowns, that's what it would be $16 a month.
And that's expanding that's expanding the police service too, to add another squad, right? So instead of it being just our status quo level, it'd be adding another squad. So it would add those personnel units that we would think that we might need. So it's just, we don't necessarily have to hire that many people, we might hire less.
And again, none of this is part of the official proposed budget. This is part of the idea of, okay, well, what is this limited police department concept?
A quick question before the break, so I can run numbers during the break. What would the best guesstimate you have be on, I think you said the average assessed value on a home in Troutdale was $260,000?
Yeah, that's my calculation for the current numbers, yeah.
And what would their annual property tax increase look like, or what's that cost per thousand of the fire district?
Oh, well, I don't know that the fire task force has come up with what the cost per thousand on the fire district alternatives.
Which one do you want to, can you repeat your question so I can better?
So we're transferring some of this into a different fund. Yes. So, and I appreciate that the benefit of that is that, people whose assessed values are lower, assumably, maybe it might be a slightly more fair way to approach it, but it still requires an extra payment from the homeowners. What would that look like in a wild cost range?
Right now, City of Gresham is proposing a $3.73 per thousand rate, just for operating their current 6 and 6.5 or 6 1/3 stations. And they're saying in order to get to their optimal 8 1/3 stations, which would add a station near Wood Village and another near Pleasant Hill, then they're looking more at like $4.76 per thousand. So, I'm looking at, there's two other options on the table. There's District 10, which is basically nothing but an admin building, but they do have capital assets in the sense that there's 2 fire stations and a training station and a few equipment apparatus. So maybe there's some capital investment there. That's at $2.85 per thousand is their permanent rate. And that's a pre-existing district that has a permanent rate. The other option is Clackamas 1, which is at currently $2.42, but they have a 40 or 2.64. They have another operating levy on it, so it takes it to $2.92 per thousand for Clackamas 1. So there's your numbers of the 4 options that we're looking at: $2.85 per thousand for District 10. $2.92 per thousand for Clackamas 1, $3.73 per thousand for current Gresham, or $4.76 per thousand for their enhanced fire mechanism.
But to just put it in perspective, right now you're paying $376 to the city for everything. So it would almost double that liability.
So it's about $970 per, if it's an average $260,000. And I took $373 as kind of, by the time we get there, what we, just as a wild ball. So we're saving $30, $360 on utility, and getting another $960, so that's what, $600 a year increase, $50 a month.
Higher taxes, in other words.
Yes.
Everybody,
Yes.
that is the tough sell for
I'm not going to argue that.
forming a fire district, is you have to convince the voters that these higher taxes are something we want you to do and you will want to do. They need to vote on it.
Right, oh, absolutely.
I'm just trying to get a mental picture of how this compares on a total.
Very tough sell.
Yes. So discussion was back when we put the $15 on, and the talk of going to a fire district, is that in order to get the fire district to pass, we'd most likely have to tell the people that that $15, now $32 would go away. To get a fire district, we're still paying $16. Have you calculated how to make this work and make that safety fee go away?
There's a couple ways, I think. I want to just put that this puts into effect the parameters that we're proposing. Right. So, Paul had an email today, which was sent around as part of the question and answers, part of the record. But there are other resources. They're not as, we use them in multiple different ways, but there are other resources in the general fund when we talk about fund balances and things of that nature that you could potentially tap. Alternatively, what I'd like to see is that those departments, whether it's the police, whether it's fire, whether it's parks and admin, that when they get to this point, instead of going to like a public safety fee or something to that effect, we find a way to raise revenues, right? To raise revenues on those fronts. And I liked your idea, Mr. Mead.
I'd like to introduce it, but I think it's a longer discussion, so I'll wait till after the break.
Yeah, I mean, there's not much we can do as a budget committee, right? But I did appreciate your comments on that. You're thinking outside the box. I loved it. It's revenue generation side, and that's where those are the kind of ideas that we need. So I did appreciate that, and I appreciate your email on that front. But for now, what we're dealing with is how to do this. And so there's a couple of mechanisms. One, we can do contracting, add contracts, which augment our costs. Two, you could do with an operation levy to augment in lieu of a public safety fee, right? So if we keep our numbers at the baker's dozen officers, if you will, instead of adding additional, maybe we get a contract with Fairview that augments us, and then all of a sudden we've got 24 anyways, then maybe our number is still 5.1 or 5.2. So then we don't necessarily have that additional $3 service fee, right? So, and then maybe as things get elevated, we can, because obviously, the costs for services are going to escalate as time progresses. And so as those go, maybe there's a police operating levy 5 years, 10 years down the future. I'm diving into my crystal.
Ready for a break?
Do you have another question?
Those 4 different levies for the fire districts, how stable are those?
So District 10 basically contracts with Gresham for their services. And they contract with Gresham to operate their firehouses. Their firehouses are the one up on Orient, the one on Cherry Park, and then they have their training facility down on Halsey. So I don't want to say anything negative about Fire District 10, but there's not a lot of meat on the bones there, if you will. Clackamas 1 is a much larger, much more sustainable fire district that's out there. Gresham is much larger, it's sustainable. But the cost first Gresham, cost first Clackamas, cost first District 10, those are what we need to be weighing, and those are what we're looking at.
For how long would those last? How often can those change?
Well, that's why it's a permanent rate. So
those are all permanent rates?
Those would be permanent rates.
Okay.
Yeah. So what
It'd be the same tax 5 years
Yeah.
from now,
So
less the 3% increase in your.
So the 373 or the 476, that's why they're studying this. Do we want to, if we start a new district, that's the 4 cities. If we start a new district, what do we need so that it's actually sustainable, not only now, but in the future? And that's where they're coming up with that $4.76 per thousand for their enhanced service model. And with that, they feel that that's a sustainable number that can keep them going into the future, so they don't have to turn around and go for an operating levy next year.
Ask one last question.
Yes.
If we were to do like a Gresham, Fairview, Troutdale, Wood Village kind of thing, don't we, or even if we worked with Clackamas, don't we lose a lot of leverage in terms of how things go? Like, for instance, maybe there's one group that has a lot of, heavy in administrators and short in firemen, or, somebody that replaces their equipment more often than we think should be, and is driving our rates up. Where do we have the most voice to be able to, you're smiling.
So in my political opinion, so it's not necessarily a budget question, but it is a political question, and it is kind of a policy piece. So by going into a district, the residents of Troutdale instantly have more of a voice than what they have currently. Okay. We're currently contracting, right? So our contract basically says we're subjected to the whims of Gresham in general. We don't have anyone sitting on their board. We don't have members that actually have any say. If we're in a district, we instantly have representation, right? So no matter which district we're in, unless we contract with District 1, then we would just be trading one contract for another. However, if we're annexed into District 1, then we would have representation, right? So as long as we're annexed into a district, we would have the opportunity for representation.
I'm asking it from a budget perspective of what to expect. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Councilor White?
We want to go on break. Eric, I couldn't hear your answer to Sandy Glance's first question. Was the average assessed value in Troutdale is how much?
What I calculate currently, based on the most recent tax for a residential unit, which is the county's definition, is both single-family homes as well as townhomes, et cetera, but 260,000 is the average, which of course, nobody here has an average home, so it doesn't, that's the.
Okay. All right. With that, without further ado, let's take a break and we'll reconvene at 8 p.m. 15 minutes. We're in recess. All right. We are back in session with the City of Troutdale Budget Committee meeting. And at this time, we're going to recess the Budget Committee meeting and go into the Urban Renewal District Budget Committee meeting.
Good.
Okay, so the Budget Committee is in recess, and at this time, we'll call to order the Budget Committee meeting for the Urban Renewal Agency for the City of Troutdale for Wednesday, April 22nd, 2026.
Chair Whitma.
Here.
Director Andrews.
Here.
Sorry, I thought you wrote there, so. Director Allen. Here. Director One.
Present.
Director White.
Here.
Director Davidson.
Here.
Director Leamy.
Here.
Tammy Stephenson.
Here.
Jean Benn.
Here.
Heidi Timberman. Here. Sandy Glantz. Present. Paul Wilcox.
Here.
Victoria Rizzo.
Here.
And Kevin Nemo.
Here.
All right, we have quorum, and you are up, Mr. Newman.
Okay, well, as is typically our process, we'll take a break from the city and the complications there and back to the urban renewal. We covered it on Monday night. I didn't get any follow-up items or questions to resolve or address as a result of Monday's presentation. The situation's pretty straightforward, as we talked about on Monday. So just quickly to review for the record, the two funds, the Riverfront Development Fund, the Debt Service Fund, the requirements specified for each. And here we go. So is there any budget committee discussion for the Urban Renewal Agency budget that we covered on Monday night?
Any questions?
Okay, well, then we would do what we typically do, which is move to motions for the Urban Renewal Agency. So, Mr. Chair, I would request a so move motion that the Urban Renewal Agency of the City of Troutdale Budget Committee approve a levy for the Troutdale Riverfront Renewal Plan area for the 26-27 fiscal year. The maximum amount of revenue that may be raised by dividing the taxes under Section 1C, Article 9 of the Oregon Constitution and ORS Chapter 457.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilor White, second by Heidi Timmerman. That the Urban Renewal Agency for the City of Troutdale Budget Committee approve a levy for the Troutdale Riverfront Renewal Plan area for the 2026-2027 fiscal year. The maximum amount of revenue that may be raised by dividing the taxes under Section 1C, Article 9 of the Oregon Constitution, ORS Chapter 457. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, call the roll, please.
Tammy Stephenson.
Yes.
Chair Whitma.
Yes.
Jean Benn.
Yes.
Director Andrews.
Yes.
Heidi Timberman.
Yes.
Director Allen.
Yes.
Sandy Glantz.
Yes.
Director One.
Yes.
Paul Wilcox.
Yes.
Director White.
Yes.
Victoria Rizzo.
Yes.
Director Davidson.
Yes.
Kevin Minkoff.
Yes.
And Director Leamy.
Yes.
Okay, let the record show that this committee can be unanimous on something.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Staff requests a so move motion that the Urban Renewal Agency of the City of Troutdale Budget Committee approve the proposed budget for the fiscal year 26-27 fiscal year in total as submitted. Motion from someone?
So moved. I'll second.
Oh.
It's a tie.
Sandy and Victoria.
Okay, you're out, Zach. We're going with Sandy and Victoria. Okay. All right, we have a motion by Sandy Glantz, second by Victoria Rizzo, that the Urban Renewal Agency for the City of Troutdale Budget Committee approve the proposed budget for 2026-2027 fiscal year in total as submitted. Is there any discussion on the motion on the floor? Okay, call the roll, please.
Chair Whitma.
Yes.
Jean Bent.
Yes.
Director Andrews.
Yes.
Heidi Timberman.
Yes.
Director Allen.
Yes.
Sandy Glantz.
Yes.
Director One.
Yes.
Paul Wilcox.
Yes.
Director White.
Yes.
Victoria Rizzo.
Yes.
Director Davidson.
Yes.
Kevin Minkoff.
Yes.
Director Leamy.
Yes.
Mike Stapps.
Yes. Okay, that one again is unanimous, so we're on a roll.
So with that, Mr. Chair, staff would like to thank the board and the budget committee, and
Paul said no.
Did you say no? You voted in favor.
Okay.
Okay. With that, if there's no other business for the Urban Renewal Agency, take a motion to adjourn.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we're out of there. All right, and now we will reconvene the Budget Committee meeting for the City of Troutdale. And a few other points of business to take care of before we go into deliberations.
Okay, so, so I know we will talk about police many times more before the budget is done, but to finish the presentation that's been prepared, the remaining items, so there's the public safety building operations, page 85, that's the operation of this building. Landlord costs, maintenance operations, there's no specific staff in this. MCSO currently pays the 72.5% of the utilities. Increased maintenance cost of 50-year-old building, our pending HVAC replacement that we referenced before. And then we had a question about the revenue and the costs and how it flows through and whether we ought to be counting savings from the lease as part of the $7.2 million we saved on the IGA. And this is how the costs shake out for this building. Doesn't include this year because this year's not over yet, but. So any questions on the page 85, this public safety building budget? Okay, transfers, page 124. Transfer is sort of, this is the leftover lines, general ledger accounts that don't fit anywhere in particular. Non-departmental expenditures, transfer to the debt service, fund loan repayments, et cetera. It's page 124. This is where I forgot to mention on the prior slide, which it matches with, this is where we're proposing to discontinue transferring money to subsidize the GO bond levy. So I've got that marked there on page 124 so that you see it there. Any other questions? Okay, that takes us directly into general obligation bond debt service, which is way at the back of the book, page 264 and 268, where our debt service. So the current general obligation refunding bonds that are outstanding are related to the funding of this building, $574,000 debt service for the coming fiscal year, 5 years remaining on the original 20-year term. That's the chart, same one that's in your book, showing the relative pieces of the overall levy. The light gray one there in the middle is the WPCF bonds that were paid off the last year, 18-19. And the full faith and credit debt service is also way in the back there, and it's related to the city's borrowing without a dedicated repayment resource from a tax levy approved by the voters. So it is, the expectation is that any and all assets of the city are there to make good on the debt, which is why it's referred to as a full faith and credit debt. The $1.5 million that the city borrowed from the Oregon Brownfields Redevelopment Fund, the city did the borrowing, turned around and loaned that money to the Urban Renewal Agency as part of the cleanup process for the site, 10-year term. Making our way through that. The schedule of that is the very last page in your book. 5 years remaining on that. It's, till the last year, it's $203,000. So anyway, so that was where we thought we would go ahead and take the break before we got through the rest of that. So anyway, any questions on the debt service pieces? We already did the break, so general fund forecast, this is the same slide that I showed you on Monday night, showing us working through the numbers, the ending fund balance of 4.7. For the assumptions that go into the forecast, 22% contribution rate, PERS going to 26, and then 28 in July 29. Wages are plugged in at 3%, healthcare is plugged in at 5% growth, materials and services at 3%. Fire contract costs are based on what the IGA is, so it's not an estimate, it's just the number. The police contract or the police costs have got the IGA for the term of it and then continue under the same growth rate. Capital outlay is just plugged in at $500,000 per year. Also assumes, again, the discontinuation of the expense for the bond subsidy. Property taxes are assumed 3%, other revenue at 1%, public safety fee at $32 as proposed. Had gotten the question, and I had referenced it in prior presentations, but the additional property tax revenue that will come from the BESS or the Troutdale grid, the battery storage facility, doesn't come on until November of 2028. So it doesn't affect the next couple of years of property tax revenues. So that's the same chart as I showed you on Monday night. This is, to simplify, this is just what the proposed budget is, which is what's in there, which is the ramp up, not the startup. It's just the 2 FTE addition to police, 0 bond subsidy, continuing to make the IGA payment to the MCSO, and the 32 a month public safety fee. So that's the projection. You know, I don't know what the future is, so I mean, there could be 15 different permutations, but you know, I obviously expect that there will be policy decisions made, and then those future years will end up being different numbers than those. So that's where I think I get to the end of my slides.
I just want to give us a real brief before we dive into deliberations and start going through this. My take on where we sit budgetarily. What's in front of you is what is considered a balanced budget. And by that I mean we have a carryover balance of 1.7 million. We have a contingency of 3 million. So in that, all of our expenses, all of our proposals are currently within budget parameters. Where we see the decline is in the carryover balance or our beginning fund balance, but technically the budget is balanced. So with that, you also have the $32 public safety fee that's being proposed. That's a policy decision that the council will need to make in order to make up the the denominator when we come to public safety costs versus the property tax. And so last year, the ordinance was the public safety ordinance that established the fee, and the parameters for calculating that fee were such that it took all the public safety fees, applied the property taxes to that, and the remainder is what was divided to structure that public safety fee. And last year, that remainder was about 1.4 to 1.5 million. So the council elected to go with a $15 public safety fee. The $15 public safety fee did not quite hit that benchmark, the 1.4 million denominator. And so it was less than what we had hoped. So the new calculations with the revised data after being through it for a year, the number is to 2.8 million that we're trying to make up. And that's why you see that $32 proposal versus the 15 that we had last year. There's a couple ways to deal with shortfalls like this. You could do an operations levy. So the council could apply the public safety fee temporarily and then send an operations levy to the taxpayers, the voters, to make a call on if they want to sponsor a public safety levy. A public safety levy would be a property tax versus what I consider a regressive tax, so that fee structure that we're applying right now. That'd be an alternative to that. In the budget, there are some areas where we can look at making cuts, things of that nature. I'm sure that there's a target that this committee has in mind. You have an idea in your mind about what we need to address, a policy or some sort of management operation that you don't think is relevant. I would like to know what those are, so then maybe we can address them and bring them back to the committee if you so desire, or we might be able to even get through it tonight if we can all agree on what those directions are. From our standpoint, what's presented is what we need to manage the budget and get the things done that we need to in the next calendar year. There's a list of capital expenditures up front that I'm sure will be part of this next discussion and deliberation. But if we get down to the nuts and bolts of this discussion, what I want to try to avoid is going through this whole thing, line item by line item, department by department, trying to cut this or cut that. If you have a target in mind, it would just be simpler if you let us know, management know what that target is, and we can go back and crunch numbers with our department heads and try to figure out operationally how we're able to achieve that. And if we can't achieve it, we'll bring it back to you with revisions to that. But that being said, I think it's really important that we do get this budget committee's proposals on what areas they see or what programs, what capital investments or improvements or purchases that you disagree with. And I think that's kind of the key to this functioning and moving quickly. And I think there's ways in which, from my experience, we can make that happen a lot quicker if we just have an idea of where those targets are, and then we can motion to amend the budget as such with a recommendation. We can recommend a motion with a target reduction. All these things are possible. So anyways, with that, I'll hand it back to the chair.
Can I ask a question on that? On the public safety fee, you said the formula was basically that all the property taxes go towards police and fire? But that doesn't include things like parks and tourism, anything like that. That's out of general. Just what we have allocated for police and fire.
So the funding base would be your property taxes. All property taxes go into public safety.
Right.
And so on top of that, our general fund has franchise fees,
And so that's what the
permit
rest of the
fees.
general fund is financed.
Yeah, that's how we finance the rest of the general fund.
And is that formula, how easy is it to change that formula?
To change the formula for.
So if we have this formula and we say this is how much we need for the water, the police, whatever, the safety fee, is that something that then council deliberates on and says, yeah, we said we need that, but we really don't want to do that to citizens?
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about a contract shortfall, and this is where those numbers come in at $2.8 million. That's more than the entire capital expenditure in the general fund currently. So it would just, you'd be eliminating entire departments. entire service segments. And operationally, we get.
So that's how it gets resolved, okay, based on what council decides, okay.
So, I mean, what we're stuck with is if you think about it this way, over the past 25 years, we've been cutting. We're down to the bare bone minimum that it takes to operate a city of this size. Our contracts are what's putting us over. So our contracts with Gresham, our contracts with Multnomah County, those two contracts alone, plus our contract with 911, is like $10 million. That's $2+ million over our property tax revenue.
Okay.
And so that's that delta that we're talking about.
Thank you for clarifying.
I do not recall us basing a shortfall on, or allocating, I might say it a different way, allocating all the property taxes to police and fire. I mean, in all the years I've been here, I just never heard that one before. That all the property taxes should go to police and fire.
So it's part of this, I mean,
I just wonder where that came from, or how. I just don't remember.
I don't believe the proposal, and it's a proposal, was all of the property taxes. I believe it was 50% of the property taxes to police, 20% to fire, and 30% to city services.
Of what?
That's the framework that we're
amount.
proposing.
Of what amount?
The 7.9 million that we receive in property taxes.
But we're still putting all that 7.9 million into public safety currently and more.
Correct.
I guess, am I saying, is this the first year we've looked at it that way?
So
I'm not saying it's wrong, I'm just.
Well, the ordinance that was adopted, go ahead, Mr. Wilson.
What I just heard is you've got 7.9, say 8 property taxes. 50% of that is 4 million. It's not even gonna cover police.
Exactly, good one.
Right.
No, it's all of our property taxes in this bucket, and then the $32 is what covers the delta between the 7.9 and the 10.7.
All right, you mentioned,
There it is.
you're going to talk about an ordinance.
Yeah, so the ordinance that was passed for the fee basically says that the fee is based off of the delta between our property tax and the total cost for public safety. That's how that fee is structured, that's how it's based. So we're basically, the public safety fee is simply the delta between our entire property tax revenue stream and the cost of public safety. That's how it's calculated.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a quick question brought up by that line item of the BOEC. I was under the impression from communications from staff that that cost would be decreasing significantly, potentially, if we were to depart from sheriff's office. Is that, and it apparently it's going up. So is this built in? Go ahead.
Yeah, so to answer that question simply is I believe it would go down, but we're not there yet. So this next year is kind of a conglomeration of us ramping up and hopefully Multnomah County ramping down. If I'm able to get all of our general orders and logistics in place to start hiring officers, I can basically put out a 90-day notice on the Multnomah County contract and cancel that as I hire and train, and there would be a little bit of an overlap, but we're still going to be subject to the BOA calls of Multnomah County for this entire region. And so I believe in the future, with fewer officers, fewer calls, fewer responses outside of Troutdale and in the surrounding areas, that those costs should go down.
And as a follow-up to that, with the ramp up, it doesn't sound like we would have 24/7 coverage with like the ramp up staffing of the chief and the lieutenant, correct?
We would still have 24/7 because we'd be under the contract with Multnomah County until such time as we switch over.
I guess that's what I'm getting at. We would not be able to switch over and maintain a 24/7 coverage with just those two.
Correct. I would have to hire before I would be able to fill that 24/7 void.
Right, so.
And I have to hire before I can transfer jurisdiction.
Right. So as a next step, I guess as an in-between, is there a middle ground that we've calculated for proper coverage that we would be able to give that 90-day, have 24/7 coverage without doing the full 13 FTE staff on police?
So the way that I'm planning it in my mind is the earlier that I can get out of the Multnomah County contract, the more money I can save. And if I can get out earlier and get my police on, there's enough under that $700,000 differential to cover a little bit of overlap during that time frame. So my hope is to ramp this up faster so that I can get it under that 700,000.
I have a follow-up question to that, and that is, the current prospect is by 2029, the city is out of money. The fact that we would be saving money by building our own fire and police force would still not avoid hitting bottom, because it's going to take several years to make that switch over and to hit break even and then actually surpass and be better off. So it isn't going to avoid us having to find other revenue sources, which is what the $32 is about right now. And that doesn't even, at $32, that doesn't avoid hitting bottom. In which case it's lights out and, I don't know, become unincorporated or file bankruptcy as a city and so on. So I just wanted to clarify that, even though there's savings, it's still in the future and it's still not going to avoid becoming bankrupt as a city without some other kind of revenue source. And I would like to discuss my proposal at some point. So let me know when you want to enter into that.
Okay. Couple of things before we get going. Big book. I've heard a lot. You guys have heard a lot. At the end of the day, this isn't about us. It's about the people we represent. And I've also heard about kicking the can down the road. And frankly, I want to make sure there's a can to kick. Because we're not as bad as some cities, but we're certainly not in a great position. And if people think we are, they're seeing something that I don't see. At the end of the day, whether we like it or not, we appropriate X amount of money to be spent. And thank God it doesn't get spent every year. But you never know what's going to happen from one year to the next. And I love my council, but they moved 1.1 million from contingency and up the budget at the end of last year. So that didn't cause an additional expense. It meant basically that we were authorizing, right? We were upping the budget on those items from contingencies. Does that make sense? So that kind of tells me that's probably on the high side of what might get spent or might not get spent out of that fund. Now, whether that increases the overall budget, it usually doesn't. We don't spend into that number, but it does increase the authorization to spend. And I will tell you, just from my own perspective, we're at $1.7 million ending fund balance, and that does frighten me. And the only reason is I can remember I went back to 2008, 2009. Anybody remember what was going on then? That was when in the 2009 budget, we elected to go down to 2.1 million in ending fund balance when the general fund was 8 million. And for whatever reason, we decided that it wasn't safe to go under 2 million. So I know a lot of things change, but we're going into, in a way, some type of uncharted water maybe. But I think though at the end of the day, staff has given us their best effort. And we have to determine, are we going to raise taxes and fees? Are we going to do that and cut services? Are we just going to cut services? Or are we going to do a combination of both? But this does have a number of things in it. We've got the utility fee, right? And we're spending down ending fund balance. So we're kind of already doing a combination thereof. If you think about what we're asking of our citizens, like it or not, but between the standard property tax increase and the bond and the utility fee, we're asking the same people to pay $1,807,000 more than they paid last year. And that may be a low number, that may be a high number, I can't tell you, but it is a number. And so, I mean, that's where we're at. And I just want to say, from my perspective, I think the 50, 20, 30, or whatever that number is, I think that needs another meeting or a committee or a separate discussion or something, because I think we really need to figure that out.
Yeah, can I just talk about that? So this is a concept, a framework. I'm not asking the budget committee to necessarily adopt that as the policy framework, right? So it's just an idea, a way that we can put guardrails on the base fund for everything that we do. And all it does is establish future parameters, because we are turning a page, if you will, and we are bringing in a police force with this budget. And with that is going to come more demands on that same revenue source. And so the idea behind the 50, 20, 30 plan framework, it's just kind of a framework concept, is just that each department is going to have their drop in that particular bucket. So then I don't have other departments vying for the same funds and the same revenue sources. So that's all that is. And it would be something that, you know, maybe it's time for a budget discussion in a future budget meeting, but it doesn't necessarily need to be adopted with this particular budget or at this particular time. It's more of a discussionary item to put some framework and to put some parameters so that I don't have to deal with interdepartment conflicts over resources. Does that make sense for everyone? Because usually what will transpire here is that the departments that are front and center will get all the attention and all the resources. But then the departments that are the backbone of the organization that nobody sees, but jobs are equally important, they're the ones that get shortchanged at the end of the day, if that makes sense to everyone.
And I'll say again, just as a reminder, it's $84 million of somebody else's money. Yeah, a little bit of it's yours, maybe some of you it's more, but it's other people's money. And that's really the way we need to approach this. And, you know, what do we have to do? I wish I wasn't saying this, but it's like right now it's trying to get from point A to point B effectively. And you could say, okay, we need to do everything this year because it's going to cost more next year. No kidding. Okay? But we do it all this year. We did everything this year. Are we really going to be here next year? So what is it that what are the priorities? Because everything in here is a choice. They're all choices. We're electing to spend on something and probably electing not to spend on something else. Yes.
On the 50 for police, 30 for fire, 20 for everything else, how does that compare to other cities?
It's a good question. My experience has been police usually consumes 50 to 60% of the general budget. Fire, where in my previous locations, fire was handled through a fire district, so they didn't have to deal with fire districts, or didn't have to deal with fire. But police took the lion's share of it being the lion's share of the tax revenue sources.
And I like what Tanny's saying about priorities, and I mean, I've always said that it should be police, fire, infrastructure. That's what a city's job is. Everything else is nice, but not necessarily our first priority.
Sure. And that's why I'm saying that they still get the lion's share, but I still need some to operate the organization. Like Tanny said, it's an $84 million budget. That's an $84 million organization. And you need functions of administration, you need functions of HR, you need functions to make sure that those police can do their job, to make sure that those firefighters can do their job and get their paychecks. It's the basic fundamental of an organization.
And from a sustainability standpoint, are we able to, like, let's say we can't get a fire district or extra funding through, would we still be able to use that formula?
We could apply it, right? Apply the formula, and then that portion of the property tax would still go to it, but there would have to be some sort of offsetting funds to be applied to it, or it's just not going to be enough to provide fire service for our residents.
Okay, thank you.
But to give you an example, going way back in time, in 2010, our property tax revenue was $3,900, and our police cost was $3,700. Or I'm sorry, 3.9 million in property taxes, 3.7 million in police cost. Back then.
So it was all covered.
And that was higher than 50.
And this was what year, 2010?
Yeah.
We need another proposition to hold, to cap police and fire costs to 3% a year. I mean, because that's the problem.
Yes, it is.
Property taxes are capped.
Yes.
And held down.
And inflation, right.
And everything else is going up, so you can't rely on property taxes to cover the increase in cost.
I mean, we could have an entire conversation for days upon our Oregon tax code and how it might be restructured and ways to address it. I mean, unless Salem.
Or an alternative, which I still want to.
Okay. And with all due respect, that is something though that we cannot do here.
Oh, I can't even bring it up for discussion? So that it's made aware of by the rest of the budget committee?
The committee can't vote on a tax increase. That has to be the council.
They don't have to. They just need to be aware of it, of the possibility.
Of making changing the utility fee to an income tax.
I don't want to have a discussion with you about it. I just would like to present it.
Where's Ed Trumke?
Oh, I've already, so I'll bring it up. Here's the issue. The issue is, we're talking about a lot of regressive money-raising opportunities. $32 a month is $384 a year. Tell that to a single elderly person on a fixed income that they have to pay $384 of money that they have to shift from their medications. The same is true with let alone one person in a home with a unit of water or sewer pays $384. And a household of 5, maybe income earning people with 1 unit of water pays $384 between all 5 of them. So that's where is the fairness in that? Secondly, increasing property taxes is also regressive because property taxes is capped. The fact is they'll reassess when somebody buys an older property that had a very low assessed value. So we're going to increase property taxes minimally on a lower assessed value property and much greater on another assessed property value, just because it was sold, same property, but where is the reasonableness in that? And it hurts some people inordinately than others. So I went back and I took $2.8 million that we have a shortfall, and I did some research. There are 8,800, in 2022, 8,800 income tax returns were filed for 97060, according to the IRS statistics. Anybody can look it up. The combined taxable income after deductions and so on, was $540 million from Troutdale residents, $540 million. If you take 2.8 million as a shortfall and divide it by $540 million of taxable income, you get 0.5%, half of 1%, or you multiply by 0.005, your taxable income. So it occurred to me, we could have a city income tax. It is not unprecedented in Oregon. We had a Multnomah County income tax for a few years in 2010, 11, and 12 to get through the recession. We have a Portland Arts tax, which is an income-like pseudo-income tax. We have a Multnomah County supportive housing services, which is an income tax. We have a metro, it's a metro supportive housing. We have Multnomah County preschool for all income tax. So having local jurisdiction income taxes is not unheard of. 0.5%. What it means is somebody with $50,000 of taxable income would pay $250 a year compared to $384. If they had $100,000 a year, they pay $500, and so on. If they had $500,000 of taxable income, $500,000, they'd pay $2,500 a year. Now, somebody living on Social Security alone pays nothing because they don't have taxable income. So it is progressive. That's what it means to have a progressive tax scheme. So we could raise the money with a 0.5% income tax in Troutdale. The difference is you pay $32 or $384 as a fee that is not tax deductible for federal purposes. Raising property taxes would be, but this $384 fee that we're trying to head toward is not tax deductible, whereas a 0.5% income tax is deductible for federal income taxes. So you're not actually paying $500, you're paying $500 less, whatever your tax rate is for federal tax purposes, maybe 22% of it. So you're gonna save $100, so now you're back down to about the $384 mark, $400 maybe, net out-of-pocket cost. So I checked this out. I sent that proposal to Ed Trumke, and he came back and laid it out for me and said, we have home rule in Oregon, which means the city can issue an income tax. Full authorization. That there are already precedents in the law for it being done. That, in fact, because of home rule, we would not, and I'm not saying that, I'm not promoting this, but we would not have to put it to a vote of the population. That's the way Oregon law works with a city income tax. Now, is this going to be popular? No, but but I heard from Diane earlier, she said $32 is not popular. And raising property taxes is not popular. And I don't care what program we implement, it's not gonna be popular. But we're not gonna have a city that's broke in 3 years. We can't do it. And we don't have trees to harvest like you brought up 2 days ago. Yeah, some cities used to have, logging and other sources of revenue. Diane just mentioned, we have wells and springs in Troutdale. Maybe we can have a Troutdale derelier, like Perrier water. We could bottle it and sell it at Costco, maybe, spring water, right? But we've got to raise some revenue. And I think that an income tax, a 0.5% income tax, that's also deductible on your federal income tax return is progressive, it's fair, it exempts people that can't pay $384 a year because they're just living on Social Security. So that's my proposal, and I thank you very much for allowing me to at least present it, because it is something that while only the council can vote on, I think it's worthwhile considering.
For this budget?
Well, it wouldn't be for this budget. There's a number of administrative issues that are involved. Collection, reporting, enforcement, yeah, absolutely. But there's nothing that bars it from taking place, and I think it's a worthwhile consideration.
Thank you, councilors. Okay. Next.
Mike, I know you're new here, but I think 2008 is when we were bare bones. We had like 52 full-time equivalents. Now we've been growing the budget every year. And we actually thought we were gonna be okay, because we were told if we got FedEx in, it was gonna help us a lot, and Amazon, and the battery farm, and the Cube. So we were looking like we were doing okay. But now with these contract increases out of the blue, it's forcing us to do something. But the problem I'm having with this budget is we're not looking at our citizens, we're only looking at them for more money. And I think half of them can't afford more money. This $15 was a big alarm bell throughout the community. And keep in mind, commercial's paying 15 times that. I think Saul told me his bill was $250 a month. It's based on his sewer. So it's like, I want to see a plan that includes those people that aren't here tonight, but live in our community. Because they're struggling. I mean, in December, I asked Eric to put together a worksheet showing how much our costs have gone up, with food, energy, the levy tax, the library tax, the homeless tax, the county community college bond, and I could go on and on. Gas prices, the cost of a car, and the 3% compounded on your property tax. It used to be when that was brought up at the League of Oregon City, the whole room would say, what's wrong with 3% a year? And it's more than 3% a year. And because it's compounded on your new amount. And if they change the tax rate, so if you sell whatever you sell your house for, that tax is that's what their base is going to be for taxes. That's going to kill the value of your home, because nobody can afford them now. And I don't know where these people are coming here. They're not. People are struggling. I think we have to have some balance here. It can't just all be one-sided, like just keep extracting. The $15 took 1.4 million. I guess the number's been corrected. It's not quite that much. But at 32, that's going to double that. And that just happened. And I voted on that because I heard from the council and mayor that we weren't going to increase it beyond that. And I thought, well, 15 is a good stopgap for now while we figure this out. And it looks to me like the police numbers are so close with just a fragment of of what we're gonna need, that by the time we get it all in, it's gonna be more than probably the Multnomah County contract. And that kind of scares me. And, you know, I look at the district rates, I don't think the voters are gonna pass it, so where are we gonna be then? And they're much higher than like Tualatin Valley is like $1.90. You know, if we had a more reasonable rate somehow, the problem with outsourcing our fires, we're still not gonna save lives. They're not gonna make it to your house in time to save your life with these response times that we're seeing. So to me, we need a lot more work, and I didn't know we were gonna decide the police and fire thing in budget, you know, because there hasn't been very much talk in council about it, you know, in time for public comment and people's input. So, I wish I had some solutions, but I'm not liking where this budget is at right now.
Mr. Leamy?
So what is the gap? $15 is covering the 2 point, what did you say, 2.8?
1.3 to 1.4 million.
Out of 2.8? So we're 1.5 off. You don't want to hear this, but is there $1.5 million worth of cuts we can take here?
There's always,
Dive in.
yeah, there's always.
He said if we could give him some sort of.
You got a target. I mean, the low hanging fruit, and I already mentioned it, is the Buxton property. If we don't do any remodel work on the Buxton property, that's $750,000 right there. That's a big chunk. That's 3/4, so that gets you 3/4 of the way there, right?
And then we took, what, 90,000 off last night with a pickup truck and,
Did we take it off yet?
well, I mean, that was a
We
significant.
discussed it, yeah. I mean, you could go through, there's
thing.
there's some things in there that you could go through. But it is, if that's our target, it makes it really easy, because then this committee could agree that that's the target. We can motion to remove the 1.7 million out of the budget as an approval thing, and the management staff would go through and eliminate those functions that we could do, or we try to find where we can eliminate stuff.
Well, the number I had in my head earlier tonight was $2 million. $2 million cut. If we could not go out to the people, higher price.
The $32 fee.
Right. Keep it at 15.
Well, we only have 2.5 million in capital expenditures in the entire general fund. Getting to 2 million out of the general fund, it's gonna be a challenge.
All the other contingencies are SDC funds, or unappropriated or SDC funds that can't be moved to the general fund.
And you'd still have, well, if you think about it, what's proposed here, that $3 million contingency and the 1.74 million carryover is with the $32 public safety fee included. So if you remove that $32 public safety fee.
No, the difference between 15 and 32, so $17.
Yeah, so you're looking at about 1.6, 1.7 million, right in there, right? So that would remove essentially your unappropriated balance. You'd be down to just the $3 million contingency carrying over for a beginning fund balance next year of $3 million instead of 4.7. Unless we cut, now we could, like I said, you add Buxton back in there, that gives you 3.7 carryover, right? What's our target carryover balance? Is it 2 million, is it 3 million, is it 5 million, is it 7?
1.7.
Yeah, because I mean, right now we have a carryover balance of 4.7 budgeted in there, that's with the $32 fee.
And that's with no contingency being spent.
Correct. But, I mean, are we really gonna expend everything? Sorry, go ahead. Paul,
Yeah.
I had a question on the Buxton property again. 1.5 million borrowed from parks for that. 400,000 of that was for grades or remodel or whatever. How much of that has been spent?
I wanna say the roof is all we've done. So, Jonah, how much was our roof for the Boston? Was it 80,000?
Sorry, I didn't. Yeah.
We have spent
$50,000.
$57,000 on the roof and $34,000 on architects.
90, we spent 90.
Another comment I would have is talking about the utility fee at 32. Intended to cover the 639 startup.
Yes, it's included. Yeah, so it does help cover the startup for the police force. And so when you looked at the slide that Eric had for what we'd be saving in the future, just if we're able to get the startup going in the first year, we should save about $700,000 over what we would have been expending for the Multnomah County contract. In year two, it's closer to 1.3 million. By the end of the Multnomah County 3-year contract, where we hopefully would be saving like 2 million or more from where we would have been. So we're saving off that cliff a little bit by bringing in our own police and limiting the size and staying within our budget. But it's, the fire contract is still escalating, and that's gonna put us over.
I was curious too, Mike, where did you get all your cost numbers for the startup police department? It was so detailed, you had the
So we pulled it.
the price of handcuffs and ammo.
So we actually pulled it from our old police budget. So we were able to pull it and then add the adjusted salaries based on current. So we were just pulled from that, and Eric did a great job of compiling all that data from 2015 and throwing it in there. So then we went and looked at what the market rate was for police chief and lieutenant in cities of our size, and so that's what we came up with. So we plugged those in there.
Anybody else? Great.
So I think anytime we do not give our citizens an opportunity to have a say in whether or not their taxes that they pay go up, that the optics of that. You know, we did it last year, and there's this thing probably this year. But we know we have these huge asks ahead of us with a fire district. We have a huge ask in front of us. If we don't give them the opportunity, then they're not gonna support us when we need to ask. And I know it's just gonna cost us money. We don't know how it's gonna work. It's gonna be an operating levy, it's gonna be a fire district, it's gonna be a whatever it's gonna be. But I think if we give them the chance first to say no, then we can gather and, okay, well, this is what they said. We still need to provide these things for them. And not in a way, I think when Gresham did it, they said, well, if you don't do this, then we're gonna do this. It's somewhat threatening, but here's our reality. Our government is to govern our people. It's not to provide for our people. It's not to entertain our people. Fire, service, water, streets, sewer. Those are your 6 walls. I guess that's what I look to the government to be providing for me. The fire district thing is very complicated. Whoever's driving the conversations, if it's Gresham, they operate under a certain model. That model doesn't necessarily have to work that way. many options, many people in fire service, and more than one way to skin a cat. So, anyway, those are all these things to consider. But I really think that if we do not ask our people to at least give them an opportunity, and they may say no, they may say yes, they may not even vote, but to give them the opportunity speaks volumes. When we passed the bond to build this building, and then we made a promise that we were gonna subsidize, and we're not gonna do that. So then we're going back on our word, and we all know that when government doesn't keep their word, then no one has the government to do it. So these are hard decisions. And I appreciate every council member here. When you've been on this thing, and Dave, you guys were here when we went into these contracts. You guys went through all of this. You've been through a lot. And I really appreciate and respect you all for stepping up and having these decisions for us.
Can I just address the one question on the building, the bond? I wasn't here when it was when the initial conversation was going. But my understanding was that we were using the lease revenue to offset, right? And if we no longer have Multnomah County in the building, because we're taking it back, then we'll no longer have that lease revenue. So then it makes sense, right? So we're not really going back on our word because we're gonna be in the building, right?
Yes.
I just wanted.
Yeah, no, that is absolutely correct.
But Mike, that needs to be really clear.
Yes.
So, I mean, like Heidi said, we have to be really transparent, because if they think that we're putting a covering over their eyes, they're never gonna trust Troutdale. And so we have to really be careful. People feel burned already.
Yes.
When you talk to the community, they were burned by this building, for those of you that were here, and there are still feelings out there about that. I talked to somebody just a week ago that was really still upset about the whole bond issue of this building, and then what happened to it after it went, with the police, or with the, police. So I think we have to be really careful. My concern with the $15 is there are many people that I know that are over 60, 65, going into retirement. They're barely making it with all the increase of food, health costs, the whole works. I'm really concerned about that. The other thing I was concerned about is I had talked to a realtor, and because there's a house in our neighborhood that was for sale. So we went over there. You know how you go and talk to realtors. And she said people are leaving Multnomah County and they're going elsewhere. So I think that we really have to look at this budget and really not spend things that we don't have to. Because we really have to be, I feel like I have to be accountable for what I vote on. And I think that with all the decisions and everything that we have to make, we really have to consider what is it that we really can live with, and what can we live without.
Yeah, I just want to comment to that. That's, these are all very hard choices. And I just want to say that the more we do now, next year when we're in a, possibly even worse situation and have to make even harder choices, we would thank ourselves now to do as much as we can. But, having heard these conversations now that, we knew the police and fire was going to increase, 2 years ago at least? We didn't know to the full extent, but we knew it was not going to be pretty, and that we were already in a gradual slope, and it was going to take a nosedive. And that was why I fought so hard to try and get some of this stuff reduced to give us more cushion to be able to deal with it to get there, so that we don't have to be in positions where it's like, okay, how many people do we have to lay off? I really want to avoid that. I want to keep it to things that are hard but not just horrible. So the more we can do as soon as possible, the more we can bump the brakes to slow that down, I think the better we'll be off.
Councilor Davis.
I'll just make this short. I think I would like to see a budget with no increase of fee to the citizens and see, let's put that in your hands and see what that would entail, what those cuts would look like.
So again, the fee is based off of, the proposed fee is based off of the delta between our property tax and the combination of those contracts. So the startup, the police startup is $700,000, right? The contract for Multnomah County is $500,000. Then you have 3.5 or so for fire, and then another 850,000 for you. That's where we're deriving that public safety and service fee. It's the delta between what our property taxes bring in and that.
I guess what I'm seeing is we have a lot of things here.
Right. You're just
I would like to see what, not increasing that fee, what that would, what would not be. I guess, if that makes sense.
Okay, that's one aspect of the equation, right? So we would immediately subtract 1.7 million in unappropriated funds. You'd be left with your $3 million contingency carryover as just a base, right? And then we might be able to add to that unfunded contingency by then cutting additions, but are we gonna get to $1.7 million in what we're able to cut out of the general fund? I don't.
Are you saying that you have to spend a little more this year to help next year? Like, would,
Yeah.
so,
The idea is to try to reduce the damage in the coming years, right? So by increasing the public safety fee to the $32, we're reducing our risk to our bottom line next year and the year after and the year after and the year after. Otherwise, we hit that cliff a lot faster. Because I don't know when we're gonna get out of these contracts with Gresham, and hopefully we get out of Multnomah County this next year, which will instantly save us $700,000. And then internally, from a management perspective, I'm already starting to make moves, and I'm looking at stuff in which way we can save some money here or save some money there. We're already assessing that and trying to avoid going over that cliff next year.
so if I look at this right, we increase it to 32 this year, which helps us out next year, but there still would be an increase next year by $4 in that public safety fee, right?
Based on the fire, unless unless the council, so yes, based on just the fire fee alone.
Right. So, and then if you were to get rid, if we end up getting rid of in the fire district, it basically goes down to 3, or we can maybe say 0 there. Again, so by spending a little more this year, we're helping ourselves next year's by spending less on police, basically.
Yes.
That's the one thing.
Yeah, we're saving ourselves by the end of the 3-year IJ with Multnomah County, we'd be saving ourselves over $2 million by starting up our own police force.
So I can understand that, and that makes sense to me why, I mean, we've had a conversation about the public safety fee, and I just feel like, having done this for 3 years now, like, regardless, like, there's not enough money. It's not just us, it's every city does not have enough money to provide every single function and every single thing that they want without asking for more money somehow. And I understand that, like, this public safety fee seems a little underhanded, right? If you want to talk to, like, basically, if this was on my tax statement, yeah, I'm fine. Am I okay to pay this? Sure, but it just seems like a sleazy way to do it. I 100% understand that. So either we do this public safety fee, or there needs to be some sort of tax reform to help cities get out of these holes that they're in, or we impose, we need to a fire district or a fire levy, which is everything is asking for more money. And what, does that suck? Absolutely. But I feel like it's not, and whether it makes a difference or not, it's not the city's necessarily fault for the situation that we're in. I feel like it's at a state level, they've set us up for failure by thinking something was great back in the 90s and not looking ahead. And so what do we do? Like you said, I have a real hard time seeing that there is, my only thing would be like the Buxton property, just put it on hold. Like that is $750,000 we do not need to spend right now. It's not necessary. Boom, cut that out. Now, if that reduces this $32 down a little bit, fantastic. But I think, in my opinion, these are all things we, like Heidi said, city should provide its citizens, and there is not enough money, and that's the reality of it. And so this public safety fee is the only reality that we have right now. These other things are gonna take years to accomplish. And I recognize that that is harsh on some people. But I think if we don't do this, then there's cuts and things that will happen that will be a disservice to the city as a whole.
So if I hear you correct, you're saying, why don't we take the $750,000 for the buck that we were planning on spending on Buxton and apply it to our public safety to reduce the $32?
Yeah. I think that the things we've talked about, that seems like the most reasonable thing to just put on the back burner. We're gonna move into this building anyways. I know that was your plan. And so that thing can it can sit there. You can try to lease it out and get at least some revenue generated from that, and that can be used for however it can be used, but that does not seem like it's a problem that we have right now.
Yeah, and thank you. I'd like to throw a wrinkle into that as well. One thing I told Saul that I would do is clarify his position for the committee. And that is, right now there's 7,300 units, I guess. I don't know what the term is, 7,300 accounts, something. They're not really accounts. There's 7,300 units that we're gonna tack $32 a month onto.
Dwelling.
Well, it's not.
Billing units, they're called.
Billing units, thank you. Billing, oh, there we go.
It says
Right there.
billing units.
Yes, it does. Thank you. That's what it's called, a billing. Well, I was half right. Units. Anyway, what's the point? The point is, Saul's complaint is that his business is paying 17, being charged 17 billing units. So he's going to be paying $32 times 17 when the police and fire businesses only maybe consume 3 times a normal household. But yet he's being charged 17. Now, if the city decides that they really need to unskew that a little bit and not be overly burdensome to businesses, plus the fact that his business is paying 17 units and then there are other, like the carts, maybe are paying 3 or 4 units, that isn't really fair either. But what happens to that $32 for citizens, all the other billing units with residents? It's going to go up. It has to. If it's that unfair to businesses, burdensome to businesses, we have to also modify that somehow, recalibrate. And it's not $32 for resident units. It's going to be $50 or $60 a month per residential unit, billing unit. So I just wanted to bring that up.
Thank you.
So before we go back, I just want to circle back with, if we add the 750 to that figure right there, it would reduce the public safety fee to about $24.
Still sucks,
Total.
but
Total.
What if we took the Beaver Creek?
That's grant funded, it would have.
Oh, that's grant funded?
That doesn't help at all.
Thought we were paying a couple of grand for that.
Mr. Benz?
To me, the priorities for all the services city are clearly, to me, public safety, fire and EMS, followed by water, sewer, storm, streets. Everything else, to me, is a bonus. Everything else is a bonus. Without what I just said, those two priorities, the rest of the services pretty much are meaningless. If we're not safe, we're not content, our houses aren't burning down, we're not overrun by criminals and crime, nobody's going to utilize parks or anything else because they're unsafe. No reason to do that. I really like Kevin's idea of a state income tax or a city income tax because of the equity it provides for all different income ranges. It's very fair and equitable, and really nobody can complain. They don't have a legitimate complaint about it.
And they'll find one.
Yeah. Well, but it's the least of all evils, in my opinion, by far. And to do something, I'm okay with maintaining the current 32 if we can move towards something like Kevin's proposing. And then we can put it out to the citizens that this 32 is only going to be for this year. Next year, we're going to revise and do something different.
As a point of clarity, it will just take time, and there's no guarantee. So to get to that, or to get to a levy, like an operating levy, or to get to a property tax amendment or something like that, or even an income tax, it just takes administrative time to get those done, which we don't have, right? So that's why we still don't have
this year. Yeah. I mean for next year. That's why I'm okay with the 32 for this year, and let the public, don't put it out to the public. And do you think you could come up with something, do the administrative part for what Kevin's proposing?
I love Kevin. I love Kevin's concept because it's as he says, it's a progressive tax versus a regressive tax.
Yeah, it's so fair and equitable that you can't see straight. And it would generate what, Kevin, in a year?
Well, it depends on the rate, 0.5%, half of 1% gets the $2.8 million.
But I think it's a ballot measure. It would probably be a ballot measure.
Whatever the case may be, that would be fine. But it was certainly being a lot more equitable and I think more palatable to the citizens than any other option. And it has other benefits like the federal tax deduction aspect of it, and it treats the low income and the high income equitably across the board. I don't see how can get.
At least we don't have to make that decision. At least we don't have to make that decision.
Yeah, and then let them make that decision on it.
The council has to make that decision.
Yeah, that's fine.
Dave?
Yeah, what we are going to have to try to do is plan on ways of bringing our costs in line with what we're bringing in. The idea of raising additional revenue through a tax that is, I agree, I see Ed Trumke's analysis, but think in terms of the collection of an income tax we'd need. That isn't going to automatically just come as one big check to the city. It'll have to be collected from all the people in town. And really, the way we've been approaching this, at least I see it this way, when Troutdale Wood Village and Fairview were ready to go with Fire District 1 in Clackamas because Gresham wasn't being reasonable, or they were raising the rates by so much, they backed off and were in a 5-year extension of the Gresham deal, but it's not sustainable. We're going to have to do something different. Exactly what that is outside the scope of this committee's work, but we ultimately, we need to get through this year's budget with a balanced budget. And I think with some adjustments, including the $750,000 not to be spent on Buxton, that's the easiest large piece of low-hanging fruit that we could get, and we've got to definitely do that. But the other thing, when we were going to join Fire District 1, there were some startup costs. We had to fund over maybe a couple of years some additional equipment. They were going to build a station for us in Wood Village to better serve our response, give us better response times. But there were costs that for a year it was going to be higher. And but in the long run, it was better for Troutdale. And that's what we need to be looking at in the long run. I'm not saying an income tax collected by the city of Troutdale is impossible, but it isn't the solution. First of all, this committee discussing it it's theoretical, as I think Kevin would acknowledge. Right now it's just something that needs to be kept in the back of our minds. But if you all remember, our neighboring city to the west tried a sales tax, which was perfectly within their power to pass. They didn't have to send it to the voters. And I think Mayor Fuller was out on his ear the next year, and that's okay. I'd be willing to do something that was right. But the populace of Wood Village voted in a charter amendment that nothing can be raised there without a vote of the people, which makes it very administratively hard. They're a smaller city, but it isn't even logical. I don't even think they can have their charges for actual costs for water and sewer rates raised without a vote of the people. And that represented real anger on the part of the voters when it was imposed. Now, you're maybe proposing that we send it to the voters, and that's fine. I want to respond. The idea of the fee, I don't think that is something that can be referred to the voters exactly, except on like an advisory vote, which might be what you were talking about, and that's worth considering. But we could, if as an alternative to help keep us going for a few years, do a 5-year levy. That's I don't know what the right term is, but that's what they are, a 5-year levy. And those have to go to the voters. And it's a bond. It's a tax rate increase. And those have to go to the voters. And I don't think it would be completely unfair to say, we'll propose a 5-year levy to be voted on by the people, but if it doesn't pass and we're out of money, we have to have a fee. Or there has to be an alternative. It's not like blackmail. I really don't see it that way anyway. It's like you can't put to the voters, hey, could you vote for either one or the other? You can't do that. I know you can't do that. I can't quote you the Oregon Constitution on that, but that is not something that's possible. So I think our goal here at the Budget Committee is to try to reduce spending as best we can and plan for the future. I think the investment in a new police department in the long run is going to be a much better deal for the voters, citizens, taxpayers of Troutdale than even though it will cost a bit more at first while we're still under the county's contract. But I'm all for doing that even if there's a slight increase in the cost to get it going, because there's going to be costs. We know that. So I don't know. It's kind of I hope it's not an incoherent download, but instead of thinking in terms of how can we raise more money by changing the Constitution or something, let's get down to what we have to do here, which is figure out a way to keep this budget balanced and allow people who live in Troutdale to be able to afford the taxes.
Can I sum up what I've heard so far?
Yeah.
So from what I get from Commissioner Timmerman is that it'd be better off if we went with a operating levy, put it to the people, right? So get rid of the 32 or whatever the public safety fee is in favor of operations levy for public safety. At least then voters have a say in it, right? Okay. And then we apply the 750,000 from Buxton to this denominator and reduce it to $24 public safety fee. And then the council would need to, because we have to implement it, right? And if we go to operating levy, it's going to take time to implement. So we just have to offset it. So
It's too late, isn't it?
yeah, it'd be too late to get it on May, right? So we would have to try to shoot for November, which would have it
And then it wouldn't happen.
kicked in the next, yeah,
And
exactly.
then the sale wouldn't be.
So you would need the fee to get us through until then.
Yeah.
I was gonna say is, all of the operating levy is like, Commission recently passed $1.35 is fixed for the entire 5 years.
Well, we do have an IGA with Gresham, it's at least 4 years.
For fire.
It goes up every year.
Yeah.
I think really simply, we need to decide how much the budget needs to be cut by and let Mike and his team go back and figure out how to do that. And then come back to us, and I think we have to keep that 32 and have council look at figuring out maybe ways to make it more equitable, especially for businesses. Businesses paying 15 times does seem exorbitant. But I'm looking at the amount of difference we have and the direction we're going, and I think we have to do both of them.
I'll just be honest with you, I don't know that there's a target number. I really don't, because for me, I think we're at a point where we have to look at everything. And I don't feel comfortable dropping the ending fund balance to a place where we haven't been. And I don't feel comfortable asking for people for more money until we say, you know what? We flipped over every chair, we've done everything we can, and this is what we need from you. I might be the minority in that position, but I think we owe it to the citizens. And I guess from my perspective, is there a car we don't have to buy this year? Is there something we don't have to do this year? Is there something that can wait till next year? Because if we don't do it this year, we're going to be worse, believe me, we'll be worse off next year. The fee isn't going to save us.
So, do you need a proposal?
I would like staff to go back, okay, and see what can come off. I'd like all of us to go back and see what we can do. And we'll deal with this Tuesday night. That's what I would like to see us do.
Chair Stephenson, are you talking about cutting expenses or shifting the savings from those cut expenses to reduce the utility fee?
I'm talking about,
That's kind of what.
I'm talking about both. But I think we have two issues. One, we want to reduce the fee, but second, not having an ending fund balance and having an ending fund balance where it is.
Yeah, 1.7 bothers me.
I don't know who thinks that's a good idea. Okay?
Well, if you transfer that 750, and we don't spend that, does that would increase your ending fund balance to like 2.5?
Right.
It would, as long as we're still charging the fee. But if we apply it to the fee, then the ending fund balance would still stay.
Still stay the same.
It's 1.7 plus the 3 million in contingency, so you have 4.7.
I'm just saying if we come up with 2 million out of the general fund, theoretically, then we have choices of what we can do, where we can put the fee, what we can do with the ending fund balance. and put ourselves in a better place.
What more, I'm just gonna ask Mike this realistically, just off the top of your head. What more than the 750 could you cut that would easily not inhibit you guys from operating the city out of the general fund?
I think I could probably get up to about $1 million, 750. That would add another 250 to find, maybe we don't pay consultants, maybe we wait on filling positions here and there.
So you put 250 onto 1.7, that gets you to about 2 million.
And there's the lieutenant, we're probably not gonna hire the lieutenant right away. So like we'll hire the chief right away, but maybe there's a reduction in filling the lieutenant. Maybe that position doesn't get filled till September, so you save a quarter of that salary or something. So there might be some savings, some cost cuts there. Maybe that's 40,000, the vehicle's 50,000, consulting's 30,000, we're up to 110, 120. We added a couple of, we cut the building code, the EnerGov software that we use for building codes planning and public works, and we go to the Acela platform. We save potentially 50,000 this next year, 75,000. Do that, but there, I wouldn't bank on too much savings there because I have to train everybody on the new software, which is going to be a monumental uplift for everybody involved. So, but yeah, there are certain things I think we might be able to pull out of.
So let's just say 200, like, I mean, is an ending fund balance of 1.9 better?
Is it better than 1.7? Is that what you're asking?
Or better, yes, but obviously it's more, is that more amenable to you to be like, okay, that makes me feel way more comfortable and we can still operate our city. Because I don't want, I think Mayor also said it, like, our own police force is gonna benefit us in the future. And so I don't wanna delay that part, right? So if you can not hire a lieutenant, but then that makes sense for the end goal, great. Just kind of going through, like, I don't think there's a lot more to cut from the general fund, which is what we're talking about. So if we can do that, and hey, get our ending fund balance to 1.9, we're going to do that. And
let's see what we can cut. Okay. You guys okay with that?
But I just want to be clear, like, coming back Tuesday, hearing what he has to say, and then moving forward. Is that, I mean, if you can accomplish that goal, do we need to like sit here and still discuss things more and more and more? That's my question.
Possibly. You know. Okay.
I have an additional question for Kevin since he won't be here next week. Here, you did your 0.5% income tax calculation. I like the idea, the concept, because it's progressive. But you said you were covering the 2.8 that the fee is covering with the income tax percentage.
Correct.
So if that 2.8 is going to go up every year, so how do you adjust for that?
So if it's going up by inflation, so do incomes, taxable incomes. So 0.5% of a higher taxable income is more hard dollars. So it's self-adjusting. Now, if the police and fire are going to go up more than inflation, we'd have to make the $32 fee $50, and then we'd have to make it $75, and then we'll have to make it $100, and then we'll have to make it $150. One way or another, so maybe 0.5% goes to 0.75%.
Okay, that answers my question.
I guess first for the police, I hate to lose any services. And so I don't look at it really as we're saving money as much as we're just giving up benefits, giving up services more than just money. And I understand the need for more money. So with that in mind, that Buxton property, if you can convince the council to lease the building and then set up a triple net lease to build. So whoever you find to lease it to, to build and generate another avenue of revenue.
Yeah, I just spoke with, to that point, I spoke with the folks who are running the church out of there today and talked to them about expanding that lease, and then with the understanding that this would be more of like a triple net, where they maintain the property, they maintain the fixtures, they maintain everything else. If there's some major thing like service to the building or something to that effect, then that'd probably be on it. But we need to work through those details, but we did have a discussion this morning on what that might look like. But I think there's still kind of, we get some more revenue based on what it is today, but and then get into a long-term lease, but we can discuss that.
And not do any kind of retrofitting it to make it a city hall type building. Just convince them to lease it and get another avenue built. And then if you realize you can't get the lease high enough, you sell it. But at least you wouldn't have that debt, and you could potentially generate more income. And then, like I say, Kevin's idea, and we clarified it, just saying the simple fact that every year people's income's going up, so that 0.5% going to create more dollars. It's a great way to go. And if we do a levy, a 5-year levy thing, and we're already starting this year, and I haven't complained about it, but taking away the $175 towards the lease that the city council at that time said they would do. So if we reneged on that, how would we possibly convince them that it's okay to trust us on a 5-year levy?
Except the 175 will go away because we'll be having our own police department, and it's a moot point of that there.
We would no longer be renting the building.
Renting
no
it,
longer be-
lease payments, not.
I understand that, but it's not saying, when we were told before, and a lot of people know, oh, yeah, well, they're, we're leasing for 220, 150, 175 is going to this. Oh, that's not so bad. But I'm just saying, if you don't live with what you sell them, how are you possibly going to sell them on oh yeah, we're going to do this and you're going to get this benefit?
Well,
I'm going to convince them of that.
well, I'm hoping that what we're proposing is a good faith effort to bring back our Troutdale police and get back into this building. So I really hope that that is very visible in what direction we're trying to take it.
And I like that idea, especially if you can pull up the numbers. In fact, you might even throw that out there. How would the city save money on the leasing just in the short term? Get in here, maybe you can get in here in 6 or 7 or 8 months. To one degree or another, how much are you going to save in lease payments?
Probably not going to save. We're probably going to lose revenue from Multnomah County in doing so, but we would be reoccupying this space with ourselves. Oh, over there, yes.
I mean, your lease payment for your offices and the different
We
offices.
could do that, that's great, because I think our lease over there is
Part of your
fine.
savings potential?
Yeah, I think there is. I think there's some savings on the rents that we're paying over there, but then it could be offset by the rents that we lose over here, so.
Yeah, or just reduce general fund expenditures.
Councilor Andrews?
Thank you. Just curious, on that end, to that end, where is that income reflected in here? Is it in resources within
The
facilities?
building,
Building
yeah, the
operations.
public safety building.
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. I guess I just wanted to say, like, I appreciate staff, I appreciate everything you guys do to serve the city. Decisions like this are tough because it's kind of like somebody has to share, like, somebody has to take on the burden, right? Like, it's either gonna be citizens with a fee or it's gonna be staff with cuts. So I guess I wanna just say, like, I recognize that, and we don't make these decisions lightly I know we're gonna be coming back here with stuff next week, and you know, it's not personal, but I know at the end of the day, it's gonna impact all of us, because the less you guys have to work with and the more cuts we have to make on your end, you know, the less efficient you might be in some areas, and the more it's gonna impact us as citizens too. And, you know, whether it's quality of a park or how shiny our archway is, you know, as an example, but those are the kind of hard calls we have to make now, I think, to do that. So, I mean, I do have some thoughts on where we are, and I hope we can all kind of come together and come out ahead on that, but I just wanted to say I do appreciate you guys very much. But I just have one more comment. So I just want to make sure my directions are clear. You're asking me to take the $750 out and apply it to our fee, and then try to figure out how to get our unappropriated fund balance to a minimum of 1.9, hopefully 2 million. Nodding heads consensus that that's our goal.
Sounds good.
We'll get on it. We'll try to bring it back to you Tuesday.
Does that give you enough time?
I think so.
Councilor White?
If you could add to your list, what level all in with the police looks like. Are you trying to recreate the 28 positions we had? Okay, so.
I can't afford it. We can't afford it.
Okay. That's kind of what I wanted to hear, but I just wanted to see what the goal is.
The goal
and
is
what that price may look like if we were paying them today, what would that be? And that way I have a comparison.
I handed you something today, kind of gives you an operational plan. In that, I emailed it to you, sorry. I emailed the council has it. You guys, I didn't hand it to councilors because you guys already had it via email. But in that is kind of the startup plan. But it gives us a foundation. And from that foundation, we might be able to grow. We may be able to do a public safety levy. We may be able to get the fire into its own fire district and then do a public safety levy to expand operations later. We may be able to work different contracts with Reynolds, like we spoke about earlier, or other things, maybe the Forest Service to expand things like that. But we need to get the base foundation, and that's where I'm proposing to start.
Okay. You already did it. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? Everybody know what we're gonna do? Okay. Here's what your homework is. All right. Is there anything else? Karen? Good. Okay.
Move we adjourn. May I throw out one really?
Second.
I think he beat you.
Right.
Okay.
An income tax is something, you know, if it were to go through, is in the future, like everybody's mentioned. If there are 16,500 roughly residents, if you just take $2.8 million and divide it by 16,500, you got $170 a person per year. That is the most, probably the most fair. Everybody just pay $170 as a police fee, or police and fire fee. Now, 16,500 includes tots,
Yes.
likely, so, you know, you'd have to cull those out of that number. But I mean, that, you know, maybe we ought to figure out a way to work toward that. Like a license fee.
Labor laws.
Well, the income tax law would take care of that too, so they wouldn't be taxed. Anyway, just another thought.
Another thing to follow up on Councilor White's question, 77, showing a estimated operating cost with a limited PD of 6.692.
Right.
And now, sheriff for the year is that's actually, this year they're at 5.7.
Plus code enforcement.
So another million. Top of what's going on today. If we can hold the line on the Troutdale PD, better than MCSC did.
All right.
Make a motion to adjourn.
You know, I'm going to give it to you guys. We have a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, we are adjourned. See you Tuesday night.